Chapter 53. Some people even speculated that this young man had kidnapped a beautiful slave girl from a noble family and secretly ran away from Hittite to Babylon. There were also people who thought in their hearts, if I had such a charming and beautiful slave girl, I would definitely dress her up beautifully, but not for others to see, only for myself. In fact, wearing nothing is the most beautiful. Holding her in bed is simply the most erotic enjoyment in the world. Aman drank his wine, and the people in the tavern began to speculate. Finally, a drunken voice asked loudly, "Foreigner, did you kidnap this girl?" Aman raised his head and answered, "She brought me to this town to look for the lost sheep." Numna also smiled and said, "I wasn't kidnapped by him. I brought him here. He is a good man who helped me." At this time, the tavern owner hurried over and said, "He's drunk. Please don't mind him." Then he ran over to the drunken man. He was afraid that if they said something wrong, it would cause a conflict and damage the tavern. Aman felt that the atmosphere around him was not right. Some people looked at him with hostility. He didn't want to stay here any longer. This wine, which cost 1 copper coin a cup, was not very tasty. It was not even as good as the wild fruit wine brewed by the cavemen. He drank very quickly. Numna stood beside him and kept pouring wine. When he finished, Aman put down the cup and asked, "Boss, what is the most expensive wine in your tavern?" The tavern owner was surprised again. He took out a delicate copper bottle from behind the counter and walked to the table. "This is the best wine in our tavern. There are only 2 bottles. 1 silver coin a bottle." Aman reached into his big leather bag and found that the 3 silver coins he took out earlier were all gone. There were only 20 copper coins left. Thus, he took out a small leather pouch from his bosom and took out 2 silver coins. "I want both bottles of wine. How much is this jug of wine?" Aman recognized the bottle. It was the same one his father gave him when he left Duk. It cost 15 silver coins in his hometown, but only 1 silver coin here. Aman didn't buy it for himself. He wasn't a big drinker. These 2 bottles were for Schrödinger. The tavern owner's eyes were a little dazed. He touched his forehead as if he was wiping sweat. He nodded, "You bought these 2 bottles. I'll give you the pot for free." Aman's trip to the town today always brought him extra rewards. He got 2 pairs of shoes when he bought clothes, a whip when he bought sheep, and a pot of wine when he bought wine. But he didn't like this town. He just wanted to send Numna back as soon as possible, then cross the Euphrates River and continue his journey eastward. At least he learned one thing from this place. The world beyond the mountains was indeed very different from Duk. Aman put the 2 bottles of wine into the big leather bag. Schrödinger was still sleeping in the innermost pocket. He left the tavern with Numna. The 2 outlanders left, but the tavern owner stood there blankly for a long time. Someone next to him shouted, "Shoot, what's wrong with you? Has your soul been taken away by that slave? Why don't you talk about it and buy her for a high price? I'd like to know how much such a beautiful slave is worth." Another voice shouted, "That foreigner drinks the cheapest wine himself, but he bought 2 bottles of the most expensive wine. Is he going to give them to the slave tonight? He's really nice to her. If I could afford a slave like her, I'd be willing to feed her such expensive wine." The tavern owner, Shoot, finally came back to his senses. He shouted, "Buy her? Guess what I just saw? It's a parangan, and more than one. It's in the young man's bag." Aman didn't want to show off when he paid. He just opened a small corner of the bag. The others couldn't see what was inside, but the tavern owner, who was standing next to him, saw the luster of the parangons. This situation was too strange. Parangons were a symbol of nobility. How could a man with a lot of parangons in his pocket drink a cup of wine that cost 1 copper coin? The atmosphere in the tavern immediately boiled up. People began to discuss loudly with each other, their faces red. The story of the foreigner was interpreted into another version. The young man should be a servant of a great noble family. He stole his master's money and eloped with a beautiful slave girl. The slave girl should be very loved by her former master. She ate and wore the best food and clothes. The young man must have wronged her by spending so much money. The young man himself was very stingy. He didn't want to arouse suspicion by spending too much money, or he was poor and didn't know how to spend it. Someone started counting with his fingers in a drunken stupor. A parangan was worth 20 gold coins, a gold coin was worth 20 silver coins, and a silver coin was worth 100 copper coins. The dress that the young man bought for the girl was worth 60 copper coins. How many dresses like that could be bought with one parangan? The correct answer was 666 dresses and change for 1 copper coin. No one could figure it out. In short, it was a lot. Everyone felt that the dress that Aman bought for Yun Namna was too cheap. He had a lot of parangans in his pocket, but he bought a dress that was only worth 60 copper coins for such a beautiful girl. There must be something wrong with the young man's money. No one noticed that while the group of drunkards were making wild guesses, 2 people were whispering to each other at the best, largest, and cleanest table in the corner. They paid the bill and left in a hurry. Aman asked outside the town, Yun Namna, where do you live? Where should I send you? Yun Namna said, the place where you met me is fine. My sheep pen is not far from there. I can walk back by myself. Aman thought for a moment and said, well, I'll send you back to where you came from. Take your lamb home quickly. By the time they were halfway back, the sky had gradually darkened. The half-moon rose. Under the tranquil moonlight, they could see the undulating grass slope. The night was a gentle and quiet beauty. If the experience in the town made them a little unhappy, they had already forgotten about it in the beautiful scenery. They could not walk too fast under the moonlight. It was like they were taking a stroll together. Yun Namna was holding a lamb in her hand. After walking for a while, Aman's face suddenly darkened and he stopped. Yun Namna asked curiously, what's wrong? Are you tired again? Aman shook his head, no, someone is watching us. Yun Namna showed a look of panic, it's the middle of the night. Why are there people here? Where are they? Why don't I see them? Aman said, there are people in front of us and behind us. They should be coming for us. Yun Namna, don't be afraid. I'll send them away. I'll send you back safely. After saying that, he let go of Yun Namna's waist and shouted with his iron stick in his hand, since you're here, why are you hiding there? I don't know you, and I don't owe you money. Why are you armed in the middle of the night? A sneer came from the front. 2 people came out. The one in front was holding a sword, and the one behind was holding a staff. The one with the staff shouted, foreigner, you stole your master's money and kidnapped the slave girl. How dare you show off in Som? The one with the sword shouted, we'll cut to the chase. Leave the money and the slave girl, and we'll spare your life. Along with the voice, 3 people came out from the grassy slope behind them. They were holding axes and clubs. Obviously, they were not here for good. Yun Namna shrank beside Aman in fear and whispered, don't believe them. They want to rob you and kidnap me. They will kill you. How can you let others know about this? The first thing that came to his mind was his neighbor, Maki, the 3rd-level warrior who tried to rob and kill Aman in the charcoal forest but was killed by Crazy Ol. The second thing that came to his mind was the 3 things that Crazy Ol had told him. First, he should not kill people rashly. Even if he had to, he should use the least amount of force. He asked curiously, you are holding a staff. Are you a mage? If you're a mage, why would you do such a thing? As soon as he said that, a voice behind him shouted in panic, Master Venu, he recognized you. Don't let him go. The swordsman shouted angrily, shut up, handsome. Then he turned to Aman and said, now that you know there's a noble mage here, hand over the money and the slave girl and ask for forgiveness for your crimes. These people were inexperienced robbers. It was the first time they had done such a thing. The 2 in front of them were the sons of the mayor of Som. The elder was called Gay, a 2nd-level warrior, and the younger was called Venu, a first-level mage. Of course, Som could not be compared to Duk, which produced important strategic resources. So the position of the mayor was not high. He was just the lowest noble in the kingdom of Babylon. The mayor sent his youngest son to a nearby city to learn magic. Venu spent almost half of the family's money to become a first-level mage. This time, when he returned home from the city, he asked his father for money and bribed the priest, hoping to get a position as a priest in the temple of the city. But the mayor's father was not willing to give him so much money. Instead, he persuaded his son to become a priest in the shrine of the town. Anyway, the negotiation fell through. It was really difficult for the family to get the money that Venu wanted. So, he dragged his brother Guy to the tavern to drink and vent his depression. But when they saw Amon and Numna in the tavern, they learned that Amon had a huge sum of money, so they were tempted. When a person drank too much, they would also become more daring. They actually wanted to murder for money. The two brothers discussed it and decided that the money would go to the younger brother, while the beautiful female slave would go to the older brother. Having made up their mind, the two brothers left the town with 3 strong servants armed with weapons. They walked faster than Amon and took a shortcut to block Amon. The servants were not drunk, and it was the first time they had done such a crime, so they were a little timid. As soon as Amon mentioned the mage, the servant named Handsome thought that he recognized Venu. Venu was the only mage in Som, so he didn't need to mention his name to know who he was. Gay scolded the servant, waiting for Amon to kneel down and beg for mercy. "Take your weapons and leave now, and I will forgive you." Amon suddenly said something that no one expected. There was an inexplicable majesty in his voice, like a noble priest, or even a god. Although Amon was young, he was very majestic when he was serious. This temperament was cultivated unconsciously. Don't forget that he had always been regarded as a god by the cavemen. Amon did not like to put on airs, but the cat beside him was more arrogant than anyone else. He watched Schrödinger every day, so how could he not learn it? Both Venu and Gay were shocked. For a moment, they even had the illusion that Amon was a lord who was traveling incognito. But then they felt that this illusion was ridiculous. Which lord would walk at night in straw sandals? Guy laughed out loud as if he was emboldening himself. He raised his sword and said, "Foreigner, you're courting death." According to Article 18 of the Babylon Kingdom's Code, commoners who steal or abduct other people's slaves will be sentenced to death. Let me carry out the execution here. You're courting death. Amon was afraid that he would hurt Namna, so he did not want to wait for the others to surround him. He took a step forward and swung his iron staff at Gay's shoulder. Amon's staff looked like an ordinary branch. When he swung it, it was light and did not move at all. Gay's face was full of ridicule. His sword was not made of the best damask steel, but it was made of sharp fine iron. It cost him 15 silver coins, but this foreigner attacked him with a branch. Maybe Gay wanted to show off. He suddenly shouted and slashed at the branch with both hands, trying to cut Amon and the branch in half. He had used quite a bit of strength. This sword strike was enough to split a tree in half, let alone an inconspicuous withered branch. But when the sword hit the branch, it made a sound of metal colliding. In the darkness of the night, dazzling sparks flew. With a harsh sound, the slender fine iron sword was broken in half. The deformed tip of the sword flew out, and the other half, together with the hilt, fell to the ground. The web between Gay's thumb and index finger was torn. Amon's branch seemed to be light when it hit the sword, but it carried a strange shock. The shock wave went straight into Gay's body. Half of Gay's body was numb, and he could not make a sound even if he wanted to. Amon's staff did not seem to be affected at all. It continued to move forward and hit Gay's right shoulder. There was no blood or flesh splattering, but Gay's body went limp and he fell to the ground. He was a second-level warrior, but Amon could not tell which level he was using. This was the technique of Duk miners. But this time, Amon was using an iron staff instead of a sledgehammer, and he was not hitting the ore core. It took Amon only one strike to knock Gay down, but it showed the perfect combination of speed, strength, agility, and accuracy. He was not proficient in martial arts, and no one could teach him the various fighting techniques on the battlefield. When he practiced body arts in the caveman's tribe, he would go hunting and see all kinds of beasts. There were not many tricks to fighting with beasts. Simple and effective attacks were the most important. What's more, Amon always caught a beast alive. He never killed a beast on the spot, which was much more difficult than killing a beast. Amon had this habit. On the one hand, he could bring a live beast back to the village for fresh meat. On the other hand, Link also liked to experiment with different kinds of wild animals. He tried not to let his clansmen risk their lives to hunt. Amon did not care what kind of beast could be domesticated. He only cared about letting his clansmen catch it alive. So when he went hunting, he always had a group of people following him. Some people in the surrounding valleys drove the beasts to where Amon was, and a group of people with ropes and sticks followed Amon. Amon waved his iron staff and knocked down the beasts one by one. The cavemen rushed to tie them up and carry them away. Every time this happened, the tribe would be as lively as a festival. Amon usually fought with the king Ironback. It was not a real fight, but just a test of skills. Guy's sword looked fierce, but it was far inferior to the tail whip of the Ironback King El March. After a successful strike, Amon walked past Gay, waved his iron staff down, and pointed at the same position on Gay's left shoulder. Then he suddenly rushed forward like a beast. His staff struck out with the sound of the wind, and a ball of fire was scattered in the air. Wenwu was a mage. Under normal circumstances, he should have used magic to cover or help Gay. But he did not expect that his brother, a second-level warrior, would be defeated by this stranger in the blink of an eye. It was too late for him to use magic, so he hurriedly sent a fireball at Amon. First-level mages could only use simple low-level magic. Fire magic was powerful, dazzling, and very impressive. Many people liked to learn it first, and Wenwu was no exception. This magic was naturally powerful against ordinary people, but it was also strange and difficult to imitate against ordinary warriors. Because it was a magical power that no one else could master, it had a very good deterrent and damage effect. But Amon's judgment was very accurate, and he was not afraid at all. He rushed forward without dodging, and scattered the fireball as if it was a firefly. Wenwu let out a cry of alarm. It was too late for him to cast any magic spells. Amon's iron staff was swung towards him. The tip of the staff swept across his face with a sharp sound of wind. He felt a sharp pain as if his face was being cut by a knife. It was so close to smashing his head. But it was not his head that was smashed. With a crack, Wenwu's staff was broken into several pieces. His staff naturally did not attract Amon's attention. It was just a hard walnut wood that had been processed by magic and inlaid with an ordinary parangan. No matter how hard the walnut wood was, how could it withstand Amon's staff? As the staff broke, the parangan at the top was crushed into powder. Wenwu let out a hoarse cry and spat out a mouthful of blood. Wenwu was injured, but it was not Amon who injured him. When his staff was suddenly destroyed while he was casting magic, he could not vent the power that he had been channeling. If he did not control it well, it would backfire on the caster. His body felt as if it was being burned. The parangan was not broken by Amon either. Amon was not that wasteful. It was also because his staff was destroyed while he was casting magic. You Numna, come here. All of you, put down your weapons. Amon held his staff, raised his foot and stepped on Wenwu's cheek. He shouted coldly at the three servants in the distance. Yu Numna had already rushed to Amon's side. Before the three servants could react, they saw the two young masters who were usually arrogant and powerful were beaten to the ground in the blink of an eye. The young master Wenwu's head was also stepped on, and his life could be taken at any time. They dropped the axes and sticks in their hands, knelt on the ground and shouted, "Foreigner, no, noble warrior, spare our young masters. If they die, we will die too." Amon looked at them with a slightly strange look and asked, "You are really interesting. Why are you begging me to spare these two young masters?" Does it have anything to do with me whether you are alive or not? Don't forget that you wanted to kill me with weapons. Why are you begging me for mercy on behalf of others? I haven't said I will spare you. The servants shouted, "Noble warrior, we were forced to do this. We wanted to dissuade the two young masters, but we couldn't. We didn't want to do this at all, but we had to come." Yu Numna whispered to Amon, "Don't let them go. Don't let any of them go. Amon, you surprised me too much. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. If you didn't beat them today, they would not let us go. You would be killed and your money would be taken away, and I would be taken away by force. Did they think of sparing you? All of them deserve to die." Amon pointed his staff at the three servants and said, "As a servant, I should not be responsible for whether or not I can dissuade my master. I know what kind of punishment you will receive, so just accept it. I have no intention of punishing you. You are not worthy of my help." Then he pointed to Gay, who was lying on the ground, and said, "You might as well not have the power. Otherwise, you will only bring more harm and disaster to yourself and others." Then he pointed to Venu, "You don't deserve to use the staff." After saying this, he kicked Venu, who was vomiting blood, down the grassy slope. Venu rolled to Gay's side. Then he turned to the three servants and said, "Carry them back. Get out of here now. Thank you for your kindness." The three servants bowed to Amon, then hurried to carry the two young masters on their backs. One of them picked up the rest of the belongings and hurried away in the night. When Venu was casting his magic, his staff was suddenly destroyed. For a mage, the injury he suffered would leave a terrible shadow for the rest of his life. Gay's injury was very minor. Amon had only cracked the cartilage of his shoulder. But this kind of injury was extremely difficult to heal, which meant that he might not be able to wield his sword with his body arts anymore. As for the three servants, Amon had no interest in dealing with them. He knew that when they returned, they would only end up worse than the two young masters. He remembered that when he was in Duk, Mayor Dusty's son, Moses, made a mistake outside. When he returned home, he was punished not to eat for a day and had to copy the instructions of the gods. But the two servants who took care of Moses were beaten half to death. The two young masters had made such a big mistake and suffered such a serious injury, right in front of the three servants. It was not hard to imagine what would happen to them when they returned home. Maybe they should run away now. When they gradually disappeared under the moonlight, Amon turned around and put his arm around Yu Namna's waist. "Did I scare you? Don't be afraid. Let's keep going." Chapter 54. Yu Namna's body was soft and supple. She leaned on Amon and said sweetly, "With a strong and handsome hunter like you around, of course I won't be afraid. But why did you forgive them? They obviously wanted to kill you, so they don't deserve your pity. Leaving enemies behind might bring danger to yourself." Amon thought for a while and answered, "I'm not interested and I don't think it's worth it. I've already given them their punishment. I just don't want to kill them. They're not my enemies, they're their enemies. Since they dared to let them go, I don't care. An elder once told me that if I choose to forgive, I have to understand and be able to bear the consequences. I have to know if it's to resolve the hatred or to bring more harm to myself or others." Yu Namna looked at him. Her eyes under the moonlight seemed to be asking something. She still smiled and said, "Your elder is really interesting, but you're even more interesting. A young and handsome hunter, but the tone you speak is like that of a god." "Is it?" Amon didn't think so himself. He didn't know what kind of tone a god spoke in. He continued to stroll in the beautiful scenery. Looking at Yu Namna's expression, it was as if nothing had happened, as if she was intoxicated in Amon's arms. Amon did not speak for a long time as he walked. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing his silence, Yu Namna asked in a weak tone, "Amon, are you angry at me for not speaking? It's because of me that you've caused so much trouble." Amon shook his head and said, "You've misunderstood. I'm not speaking because the night is beautiful. I don't want to disturb this peaceful enjoyment. It's not your fault. Why should I be angry at you? I've been punished in front of the whole town. Someone wanted to chop off one of my fingers. I've also been blamed by the kingdom. Someone wanted to chop off my head. But I know in my heart that I've done nothing wrong. Since I've been through this, why should I blame you today? Yun Namna covered her mouth and exclaimed, Aman, so you have so many legendary stories. I admire you so much, you are my hero. No matter how long the journey was, it would eventually come to an end. As they spoke, they finally arrived at the grassy slope where they met Yun Namna. Aman looked around and asked curiously, where are your sheep and sheepfold? Why don't I send you home? Yun Namna untied the whip and handed it to Aman. This is a gift from the shepherd. Keep it. I live nearby, so you don't have to send it to me. My master won't be happy if he sees you. Thank you, handsome hunter. I won't forget you. I really want to see you again. Lost lamb, come home with me. She lifted her skirt and ran briskly in the moonlight. She went around a grassy slope and disappeared. The little lamb was not led by a rope, but it bounced along with Yun Namna's footsteps. It looked very affectionate and happy. Aman was stunned when he saw this scene. A sheep following Yun Namna on its own. It seemed that it was really the one she lost. Yun Namna ran to a place where Aman could not see or detect her with detection magic. The sheep following her suddenly disappeared. Yun Namna's figure also turned into a wisp of smoke and flew into the distance. At the end of the grassy slope was a hill. On the top of a small hill stood a burly old man. Yun Namna's figure stopped not far in front of him. The two seemed to have arranged to meet here. If Aman had seen the old man, he would have been surprised to find that he was the shepherd he had met outside Som. Yun Namna stopped and smiled, Enrol, you lost. The young hunter did all the things you asked for. He was not captivated by my beauty. He did not eat all the bread in my hand because of greed. He did not ask for more than what he needed because of greed. He did not delay his work because of laziness. He did not hurt others because of anger. He did not envy others for having better things than himself. The shepherd interrupted her with a slightly sarcastic tone, yes, look at the dress he bought for you. It's more expensive and beautiful than the clothes he bought for himself. But you look really funny wearing it. Yun Namna ignored the shepherd's sarcasm. She continued, he did not become arrogant because of his power and wealth. He did not display the ridiculous sense of superiority of mortals. The shepherd nodded. There was no sign of disappointment on his face. You won. From now on, you can enter and leave my realm freely. You also redeemed the lost town of Duk. But what's the point of all this? Yun Namna smiled, maybe it's meaningful, maybe it's meaningless. But I have to try. Great God Enrol, even you will lose to me. The shepherd sneered, in the long years, you will find someone like me. I'm just curious. How did you find him so quickly? That young man bought a lamb with 2 silver coins. He didn't even bargain with me. Yun Namna laughed. Her laughter was as crisp as a silver bell in the night. The reason is simple. He grew up in Duk. I'm afraid he would laugh at you for selling him too cheaply. Enrol, great God, you don't always keep your eyes on everyone. I may have lost my flock, but I found a lost lamb. Enrol's expression changed slightly. No wonder he has such power as a 5th-level sorcerer. He was able to defeat those 2 just now. It was indeed the skills of the Dushans. You actually managed to find the miners of Duk alive, and you just so happened to meet the conditions I put forward? Yun Namna laughed even more happily, yes. Just before you unleashed the flood of wrath, there was a child who was exiled from Duk. It was said that he secretly offered the god's tear to Isis. But it wasn't his fault. It took me a long time to find him. In the future, when the people of Duk return to that land, it will still be my divine realm. The shepherd said, Murin, why are you laughing so happily? Everything is still full of unknown dangers. Yun Nam Na called the shepherd, Great God Enril, and the shepherd called Yun Nam Na, Murin. How surprised would Amon be if he heard this? No wonder Amon felt that Yun Nam Na looked familiar, but he was sure that he had never seen this person before. It was because he had seen the statue of Murin in the shrine in the town, but he could not associate that solemn stone statue with the beautiful Yun Nam Na. Inanna replied, I'm happy because even the great god Enlil sometimes miscalculated. Don't forget our bet. If there is such a person, as long as he is not bewitched by my beauty and does not eat all the bread in my hand, and comes to you to redeem what I have lost, and does not turn the redemption into robbery or abandonment of his promise, I will be considered to have won the bet. If he fulfills all the other requirements, you will not harm the people of Duk without permission. Enlil once again revealed a mocking expression. That man is but a young 5th-level magus. He'd better pray for his own luck to wander around this dangerous continent. As for what will happen in Duk, even you can't predict it. Yun Nam Na said, you don't have to worry about what will happen to this sorcerer. Anyway, I have won the bet. Don't forget that besides Amon, there are still descendants of the people of Duk alive. You can't stop them from returning to their ancestral land. Enril nodded indifferently and said, I won't stop them, but you can't directly help them either. That sorcerer has already helped you win the bet. Are you still not going to let him go? Yun Nam Na laughed again, he is very handsome and interesting. I am very interested in him. Enril sighed, another poor man has fallen into your hands. I mourn for his bleak life in advance. Yun Nam Na stopped laughing and immediately showed an angry expression. Enril, don't you care too much about other people's business? Enlil turned a blind eye to her anger and said indifferently, which man who won your favor ever had a good ending? This has nothing to do with me. It's your own business. But don't forget, when you leave my divine realm this time, you can't use your divine power. And Humbaba is guarding the Euphrates River. How are you going to cross it? Yun Nam Na snorted angrily, if Humbaba listens to your order and stops me, I can also use my divine power. Enril shook his head, Humbaba won't stop you. He wants to keep a few more of his 9 heads. But in the Euphrates River, there are his descendants, the ferocious snakes lurking in the river. I hope that young man named Amon won't be the first one to fall into misfortune among all the men you have ever fallen in love with. Ha, if it weren't for his ability, he would have been dead already. At the moment, Amon didn't know that the Yun Nam Na he met was Murin, the patron of Duk. He also didn't know that Murin and Enril had made a bet, and he had helped Murin win the bet. What was more interesting was that Amon was only a 4th-level sorcerer, but both Enril and Murin said that he was a 5th-level sorcerer. After watching Yun Nam Na leave, Amon scanned the surroundings with detection magic. After making sure that no one was following him, he waited for a while and then walked towards the Euphrates River. Amon's original plan was to cross the river and head east. Madanzo had told Amon that if he wanted to go to Babylon City, he had to cross the Euphrates River, but not at night, because there were giant crocodiles and even more terrible monsters in the river. It was said that those monsters were the descendants of Humbaba, the patron of the Euphrates River. They only came out at night. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't swim across the river. He could only take a ferry at noon. Amon didn't need a ferry. His bone was an invisible ship. But after what happened in Psalm, Amon didn't want to use it easily. A few god's stones had already caused so much trouble. If this precious sacred object was recognized, wouldn't there be no end of trouble? The moon was bright. Standing by the river, Amon could even vaguely see the fields and villages on the other side. If he used the invisible ship to cross the river, it would be hard to avoid being seen. If it happened to be a mage, he could tell at a glance that someone was casting magic with the help of an incomparably magical artifact, and it might be very troublesome. At night, he might be attacked by monsters, but in the daytime, it would be even more inconvenient. People on both sides of the river could see clearly. He thought for a while and decided to go further downstream and find a ferry to take a ferry. He wasn't in a hurry, so it didn't matter if he walked slowly. First, he would find a place to rest for the night. He was really tired today. Aman walked along the grassy riverbank for a short distance and sat down in a hollow between two small hills. He remembered that it was time to make something for Schrödinger. The cat slept very soundly today. So many things had happened along the way, but it didn't even snore. After taking off the leather bag from his shoulder, Aman was about to carry Schrödinger out of the bag when he heard a hiccup. Schrödinger jumped out of the bag lazily, stretching its limbs and shaking its fur as if it was stretching its muscles and bones. Looking at the 2 bottles of wine in the bag, Schrödinger had already drunk 1 bottle. Aman asked with a smile, "Schrödinger, you left another bottle of wine. Is it for me or for yourself tomorrow?" Schrödinger had not paid much attention to him for the past year, but Aman was used to joking and coaxing the cat. He didn't expect it to respond today. Schrödinger stretched out its paw and began to write on the mud. Aman was surprised and quickly stood up to look carefully in the moonlight. He saw that Schrödinger had written, "Don't look for me, I will come back for you. Be careful of that woman, don't let her see the bones, don't anger her, and don't ever, her, or you will be in trouble." Aman was stunned. "What do you mean? Don't you want me to look for you? Are you going somewhere? Who is that woman? Are you talking about Yoon Namna?" Schrödinger did not answer Aman. It stretched out its paw and quickly erased the writing on the ground, then turned around and ran to the hill next to it. With a swoosh, it disappeared into the grass. It was not easy to find a cat that ran away in the middle of the night, and Aman's detection magic could not detect Schrödinger, so there was no way to chase it. He knew the magic of this cat, and its behavior could not be measured by common sense. Since Schrödinger said it would come back for him, there was no use for Aman to be anxious. Looking at the message left by Schrödinger, it was clear that it wanted him to be careful of Yoon Namna. That girl was not an ordinary shepherdess, Aman could already see that, but what else was hidden about her identity? Schrödinger reminded Aman, "Don't ever, her." The divine text in the middle was empty, and it did not say that he could not do anything to Yoon Namna, so there was infinite space for imagination. But judging from the relationship between a young man and a woman, it was probably that kind of thing. And at the same time, Schrödinger said, "Don't anger her," clearly telling Aman not to offend this woman, and then it ran away without any explanation. Aman sat there thinking for a long time, and decided to listen to Schrödinger. He trusted this cat to get to where he was today, but in his heart, he wondered if he would meet Yoon Namna again. There was no use thinking about things that he could not figure out, so Aman immediately shook his head and settled down. This was a good habit of his. He used water element magic to wash his hair, body, and the old clothes on his body, and then put on a new set of coarse linen clothes that he bought today, and the pair of soft-soled cloth shoes that he had bought from the tailor's shop. It was really comfortable, and he had to thank Yoon Namna for asking for the shoes. He put the old clothes and the new set of clothes in his leather bag, and kept the bone at the bottom of the bag. This was the holy relic of the temple of Isis, the rib of Osiris, the god of the underworld. It could not be detected with detection magic. As long as Aman did not take it out in public, no one would know that he had this bone. In fact, the same was true for Schrödinger. Even the most brilliant master of magic, if he did not see it with his own eyes, would not know that Aman had hidden a cat in his leather bag. Meditating with magic every night had become a habit of Aman. Not only could it restore his strength and energy, but it could also bring peace to his mind. In this state, Aman would habitually test the power of his magic. It was not a specific kind of magic, but the ability to communicate with the outside world contained in his spirit. This was the foundation of all magic. At midnight, when the moonlight was at its softest, Aman's extremely peaceful state of mind seemed to feel a trace of disturbance. It was not any kind of distracting thought, but a germination of power. He did not use detection magic, but he seemed to see his heart and body, as well as the moonlight, mountains, and rivers outside his body. This kind of seeing was a kind of feeling. He felt that there seemed to be a power of the same origin as his divine power in the world, pervading everywhere, almost indiscernible, but deep, vast, and boundless. The source of a mage's power was to sense the laws of nature, communicate with them, and control them. Only by reaching this state could one understand the true mystery of many magic spells. According to Bayer's notes, this was the state that only 5th-level mages could reach. But Amon was only a 4th-level mage. He opened his eyes doubtfully, frowned, and fell into deep thought. He did not remember when he came to the test of advancement, let alone breaking through to the 4th level of body arts and the achievement of a 4th-level mage. If he continued to practice, he would have to face the test of the devil's temptation. About this test, Bayer's notes were vague. He did not say what the devil was, or what the temptations were. Crazy Ole's note was also vague, only saying that it needed to experience all kinds of things in the world. Amon wondered if he had made a mistake. But since this had happened, he might as well try his magic. He sat there and waved his staff. From his point of view, nothing changed around him. But if someone were to look in this direction from afar, they would find that the moonlight shining between the two mountains had suddenly disappeared, leaving behind a shadow. The place where Amon was could not be seen clearly. This was the space shielding spell. Amon not only hid himself, but also cut off the sound. In theory, only a 5th-level mage who had mastered the control of power could do this. At this moment, he succeeded with his staff. Amon did not interrupt the magic because he was surprised. He keenly sensed a little change. The vague power that permeated between heaven and earth seemed to be fluctuating with him. Continuing to use this kind of magic for a long time would consume a lot of magic power. How could he achieve a stable state? There should be another way to use it. He took out 5 parangons, placed them beside him, and gradually activated them. Although he was sitting still, he felt like a drop of water floating in the ocean, resonating with the power of nature. It took him a while to find the right way. He used the power of the 5 parangons to communicate with the omnipresent power of the law of nature. Finally, he achieved a stable state of resonance. Looking from afar, the shadow under the moonlight had disappeared. It was still a hazy valley, as if everything was normal. But Amon was nowhere to be seen. Amon had created an abstract space of his own, but he did not need to continuously consume the magical power of the spatial masking technique. As long as the 5 parangons were kept in this stable and orderly state of activation, he could lurk inside for a long time. The joy of success made Amon even more confused. He had a better way to verify it, which was to take out the taroculus and read the message left in it. Every time Amon advanced, he would read a new message in the taroculus. So he took out the taroculus and activated it with his magic. Sure enough, he heard Crazy Ole's voice again. Ha ha ha, Amon, you've finally become a 5th-level mage and passed the devil's temptation. I don't know if I should congratulate you or comfort you. You must have experienced many hardships in the world. This test can be the easiest or the hardest. Everything happens without you knowing it. When you look back, you'll suddenly realize it. But no one can explain it in advance, because no one can replace your own experience. I can't either. Next, Crazy Ole explained the changes in the power that could be used from the low-level magic, awakening of power, to the advanced magic, control of power. The elemental magic that Amon first learned was the application of the power of the law of nature. But when he first awakened this power, he could not fully sense and control it. At this stage, the power that could be used was much more ingenious. Crazy Ole did not introduce the specific methods of practicing magic, but the principles of application of various magic. Then, there was another piece of information that Amon had never come across before, which was the various magic formations. Magic formations were not the result of a mage's own practice, but their function was very ingenious. They could combine the power of many people to achieve a special effect, and they could also communicate with the power of nature according to a certain law. There were also many magic formations that could help mages practice certain special abilities. For example, Crazy Ole himself had set up a magic formation to create a cold spring. So far, Crazy Ole had taught Amon everything that a mage could learn. The content included the making of scrolls, staffs, magic artifacts, the arrangement of magic formations, and the methods and principles of application of all kinds of magic. Even a top supreme mage could not be proficient in all kinds of magic arts and skills, and the direction of their practice must be focused on. Chapter 55. It was impossible for Amon to be good at all kinds of magic, to make all kinds of artifacts, or to master all kinds of magic formations, but he could understand and master them all. Crazy Ol did not know whether Amon could find Bear, but he hoped that Amon could unravel the secrets of the gods. So the more knowledge he had, the better. Crazy Ol had spent a great deal of effort to create a staff that was comparable to the staff of the Adoratress, which had been passed down from generation to generation in the shrine of Isis. He wanted Amon to master all kinds of magic in the shortest time possible. After reading the latest message in the Taraculus, Amon could not tell whether he was grateful or emotional. Crazy Ol had spent more than 100 years, gone to countless countries and shrines on the continent, read or peeped at innumerable books to compile such a comprehensive and detailed information, and left the best information in the Taraculus. But after reading Crazy Ol's message, Amon was even more confused. Just now he suspected that he had made a mistake, and now he suspected that Crazy Ol had made a mistake. Since he had to experience all kinds of things in the human world to pass the devil's temptation, he had only left the mountain for a day, and only walked around Som. Where was the devil? Ghosts, there's no devil. But in any case, Amon was now able to practice 5th-level magic. He was not in a hurry to cross the river. He planned to find a quiet place to familiarize himself with this new way of controlling his power and practice all the unknown effects of the magic he had learned before. It would be safer for him to continue his journey. After all, it was not convenient to practice many magic in a densely populated town. He opened the 4 hidden grooves on the staff, took out the original parangons, and replaced them with the Taraculus, the Aquaticore, the Ventusum, and the Flame Sprite. He had the power of an advanced sorcerer and an advanced warrior at the same time, so he could open the most hidden groove at the top of the staff and put the god's tear into it. But Amon thought for a while and decided not to do so. He remembered that when he extracted the god's tear, the power of nature was disturbed. Almost all the people in Duk who were familiar with magic were alarmed. He had to be careful when using such a thing. If he did not have absolute confidence in protecting and hiding himself, it was better not to use it. So he kept the god's tear in the bone. Although there was no god's tear embedded in it, his staff was already shocking enough. Apart from everything else, there was only one magical thing that Amon had never seen before. An ordinary staff would become inseparable after being inlaid with a parangan. It was impossible to change it back and forth. However, this staff could change the parangan's parangan at any time according to its use. It could also be inlaid with various special parangons in sequence. Amon had already learned how to make staffs, but he still couldn't understand how this iron staff was made. It was beyond his level of knowledge. Moreover, damask steel was not the only material used to make staffs. A staff must be made from something that grew in nature and carried the breath of life, such as wood or bone. But Crazy Ol used damask steel to make such a magical staff. Amon lifted the staff and removed the magic formation. He packed up his things and went back the way he came. He found a secluded place in the mountains beside the Euphrates River and stayed there for 7 days. Then he walked out of the mountains and went downstream to look for a ferry. Amon's sudden action not only evaded the men sent by the mayor of Som, but also made another person wait for him for 7 days in vain. The mayor of Som was both angry and afraid to see his 2 sons fall into such bad luck. He knew that Amon was not a man to be trifled with. Maybe he really was a lord traveling incognito. If so, his family would be in trouble. But he had to find out Amon's whereabouts first, and he dared not to make such a scandal public. He sent his men to search around the town for several days, but to no avail. The stranger must have crossed the river and gone far away. This time, Amon walked out of the mountains. For the sake of caution, he took out the 5 advanced magic scrolls he got from the mysterious cave and put them in his leather pocket so that he could use them at any time. Once again, he came to the grassy slope where he met Yun Numna. The grass was green, and the scenery was fresh and beautiful. White clouds floated in the blue sky, and the sound of the Euphrates River flowing in the distance sounded like a gentle song. The scenery was still the same, and he was in a good mood. He thought of Numna again. But why did Schrödinger remind him to be careful of that woman and not to offend her? With these thoughts in mind, he walked past the undulating grassy slope, the shallow grassy river bank, and a series of rolling hills beside the river. Finally, he came to a high slope next to the rapids. Aman was wondering why he didn't see the ferry after walking for so long. Suddenly, he heard a familiar cry. A young girl was weeping on the high slope. Her cry was very pleasant. It was the voice of Numna. Could there be such a coincidence in the world? What trouble did Numna have this time? Aman hurried up the slope. From afar, he saw Numna squatting on the ground, holding a lamb in her arms. She cried and said, "Lost lamb, where are you going? I've lost the whole flock, and you're the only one left. Who can tell me what to do? Who can send me back to my hometown? What a pitiful fate. Do you want me to jump into the river?" With these words, Numna let go of the lamb's neck, stood up, and walked to the edge of the slope. She was still wearing the dress that Aman bought for her, as if she was going to jump into the Euphrates River. Numna, don't worry. We can talk about it slowly. Don't jump into the river. Aman's voice came from the bushes. He had already rushed over and grabbed Numna's arm. "Oh, my God! Aman, it's you." Numna fell into Aman's arms when she heard his voice. She hugged him and cried even harder. Her tears wetted Aman's shirt. She cried and murmured, "I thought I'd never see you again. I thought I'd say goodbye to this world. Aman, why are you still here? You didn't go far." Her body was soft and seductive. Her plump breasts were rubbing against Aman's chest, as if she was teasing him unintentionally. Aman felt his body heating up. He wanted to push her away, but he reached out and held her in his arms. He believed that no one would have the heart to push her away. He lowered his head and said softly, "I had something else to do. I was looking for a ferry to cross the river today, but I happened to meet you again. Don't cry. Tell me what happened." As he spoke, he thought that Schrödinger had warned him not to hold her. Could it be that he couldn't hold her? Anyway, he had hugged her and it felt good. He might as well hug her a little longer. Numna raised her head in surprise. She said with tears in her eyes, "Are you going to cross the river? Can you take me with you? Take me to the other side of the Euphrates River. I'll thank you. If you can't take me with you, I'll have to jump down from here." Aman said helplessly, "What happened? Tell me." This was the third time he had asked her. Numna said with tears in her eyes, "I dare not tell others who I am. But here, you're the only one I can trust. Aman, I don't want to lie to you. Do you know that I'm not a shepherdess?" Aman nodded and told her the truth, "I can see that you're definitely not an ordinary shepherdess. Where did you come from? Who are you?" Numna didn't get up from Aman's arms. She told him her story. It was a sad experience. Her identity was noble and mysterious. Even her name couldn't be mentioned easily. One time, when she was traveling secretly, her caravan was ambushed by bandits at the border. She escaped alone and ended up in a strange place. She had no money and no one knew her. So she asked the rower at the ferry for help to take her across the Euphrates River. But the rower coveted her beauty and made an unreasonable request. She refused. She asked the locals at the ferry for help. As a result, another man asked Numna to herd the goats for him. The number of goats could not be small. The milk and wool needed to be more and more. The newly born goats with black spots were Numna's reward for herding the goats. Even if she could cross the Euphrates River, she would still have to travel a long way to get home. Numna agreed. Numna herded the goats by the Euphrates River. From last autumn to this summer, she saw more and more goats with black spots in the flock. She was so happy that she almost had enough money to cross the river and go home. But something unfortunate happened again. On the day Yu Numna went to look for the lost goats, the owner of the flock regretted his decision. He secretly took away all the goats with black spots, leaving only one for Yu Numna. Knowing that there was no hope of going home, Yu Numna wept bitterly. She even wanted to jump into the Euphrates River. Fortunately, she met Aman again. The story was so bizarre that no one would believe it. Yu Numna seemed to know this. She looked at Aman pitifully and asked, "Can you believe what I said? I don't know how to prove it, but I can write my name for you. I'm not a shepherdess." Then she gently pushed Aman and left his arms. She squatted down and picked up a dry branch. She wrote her name on the ground, Yu Numna. Aman was shocked again after hearing the bizarre story. He was convinced that Yu Numna was from a noble family. Not only could she write, but she wrote in hieroglyphs. What was more surprising was that after writing her name, Yu Numna drew a square circle around her name. Above the circle were 3 lines in the shape of a flame. According to the rules of writing hieroglyphs, the name of a god must be written in this way. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful. Only the name of a royal family could be written in this way. Back then, when Schrödinger wrote I in Igut's cursive script, he also drew an arched circle around his name. That was the same rule of writing hieroglyphs in cursive script. Now that Yu Numna wrote her name in this way, there was no doubt that she was from a noble family. Not all nobles could write hieroglyphs, and it was even more impossible for them to add such a symbol to their name. Yu Numna, I believe you. You really are from a noble family. Aman looked at the words on the ground and nodded. Yu Numna threw away the dry branch and stood up. She turned her head in surprise and asked, Aman, you know hieroglyphs? Aman quickly explained, even if I don't know, I can recognize that this is hieroglyphs. You can write hieroglyphs, which proves your background. My dear lady, with your status, why can't you ask for help directly? Why do you stay here and herd sheep? And what can I do for you? He did not admit that he knew hieroglyphs, because it might expose his identity as a sorcerer. But even an illiterate commoner could recognize that what Yu Numna wrote was hieroglyphs. Many shrines were decorated with hieroglyphs and poems praising the gods. Yu Numna said in a sad tone, Don't call me, my dear lady, Aman. Just call me Yu Numna. I like it. I can't reveal my identity in this faraway place. Otherwise, I might be kidnapped for a huge ransom. Someone might send an assassin to kill me before the welcoming party arrives. Aman, I'm telling you this because I trust you. If you help me cross the Euphrates River and send me safely to the capital, I swear I'll reward you handsomely. If Yu Numna's identity was really noble and important, she might be kidnapped for a huge ransom in this remote area close to the border of the kingdom. She also said that if the news was leaked out, assassins might come to kill her before the welcoming party arrived. This might involve a complicated power struggle in the court. Seeing Aman's puzzled look, Yu Numna put her arms around his. She explained and begged in a sweet voice, I've been suspecting that the attack on my caravan was arranged by my political enemies in the capital. They must think I'm dead. If they know I'm still alive, they won't let me return to Babylon City safely. Aman, my handsome hunter, my brave hero, Aman, if you're afraid, you can just send me across the Euphrates River and lend me some money. I'll go to Babylon City by myself. I can tell you a place. When you go to Babylon City one day and I'm home safely, you'll receive a huge reward there. His arm was hugged by Yu Numna. Her soft breasts were rubbing against his arm. Her enchanting fragrance went straight into his nostrils. Aman felt a little dizzy, but his mind was still clear. He asked, Yu Numna, how much will it cost to go back to the capital after crossing the Euphrates River? Yu Numna was a little disappointed, 1 gold coin is enough. Aman, even if you don't send me off, I'll be forever grateful to you. Aman shook his head, I didn't say I won't send you off. I'm just asking. I'm going to Babylon City anyway. I don't mind going with you. If you want to go with me, can you promise me a few things? Otherwise, I'll give you 20 silver coins after crossing the river and you can go home by yourself. Yu Numna was pleasantly surprised. Just say it. I promise you, my hero. I really don't know how to repay you. I have nothing now. Even if I have to repay you with myself, Aman interrupted her, don't talk about repayment first. I haven't fulfilled my promise yet. Didn't you say you'd give me the reward when we arrive at the capital? My condition is very simple. I hope you can change into coarse clothes to hide your beautiful figure and smear mud on your face to hide your beautiful face. You don't want to be recognized on the way back, do you? Aman had learned his lesson in Psalm. He was murdered in the middle of the night because he accidentally exposed his parangons. On the other hand, there were people who coveted Yu Numna's beauty. Aman didn't think it was a big deal to cross the river with Yu Numna. He was a helpful boy. He just didn't want to cause the same trouble again. Schrödinger had warned Aman not to offend Yu Numna. Even if he listened to the cat, he couldn't just watch Yu Numna jump into the river in front of him. If Yu Numna's experience was true, it would explain why Schrödinger had warned Aman like that. A mysterious royal nobleman should not be offended easily. As a refugee in a foreign country, Aman could not have an intimate relationship with her. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome. Unexpectedly, Aman asked her to smear mud on her face. Yu Numna looked a little embarrassed for a moment. There was even a trace of indignation in her eyes. But in the end, she still said in a sweet voice, let's talk about it after we cross the river. We are still far away from the capital of Babylon Kingdom. No one will know me in this remote place. Actually, we can rent a carriage. I can hide in the carriage and not show my face. Aman nodded and said, well, let's talk about it after we cross the river. We can also rent a carriage. But just in case, you still have to change your clothes and smear mud on your face. This is for your own safety and mine. Yu Numna lowered her head and said, let's cross the river first. I'll lead the way to the nearest ferry. Aman said, I was going to ask someone where the ferry is. It's great that you know the way. As a god, how could Murin allow a mortal like Aman to smear mud on her face? Fortunately, Aman did not ask her to do it now. Everything could wait until they crossed the Euphrates River. So she led Aman down the slope. After walking for a short distance, they saw a few villages. Further ahead, there was a town. Not far from the town was the ferry port. The ferry was often the distribution center of the trade routes, so it was natural that it developed into a town. To find a convenient place to cross the wide river, one had to rely on the natural geographical conditions. First of all, the river had to be wide and slow. The water couldn't be too deep, and the pole had to be able to hold the river to the bottom. The wind was unpredictable throughout the year, and the ferries were frequent. It was impossible to rely on sails. Basically, the ferries had to be pushed by manpower. Aman was very serious and never procrastinated. Yu Numna didn't want to smear mud on her face right now, so Aman took her to the town and spent 10 copper coins to buy a set of coarse linen clothes. After changing, they went to the ferry. The little lamb followed behind Yu Numna all the time. It didn't get lost even though it didn't need to be led. The ferry was large, flat at both ends and wide in the middle. Unlike the crescent-shaped cargo ships, this type of ferry had a shallower draft and could hold more people. Many of the people who crossed the river were merchants, so they had to pay for the goods they brought. Crossing the river cost 5 copper coins per person and 2 copper coins per lamb. Aman paid 12 copper coins and took Yu Numna and the little lamb onto the ferry. Although the place where the crossing was situated was the slowest, the widest, and the shallowest part of the river, the water became very deep at a little distance from the bank, and it could be seen from the waterline of the pole that the water was nearly 30 feet from the bottom. It was very difficult to push such a long pole. 3 boatmen on each side of the ferry held 6 poles in total. The ferry carried more than 60 people, a dozen animals, and a lot of goods, slowly moving to the other side. Amon and Yu Numna didn't stay in the covered cabin. They stood at the bow with the little lamb and looked at the scenery on the other side of the river. A cool breeze blew across the river. Inanna's hair brushed against Amon's face, tickling his cheeks and ears. Inexplicably, he felt a little itchy in his heart as well, but it felt very comfortable. Amon seemed to enjoy this feeling. The breeze on the Euphrates River was intoxicating. He even thought to himself, it's not bad to travel with Yu Numna like this. At least I won't be lonely on the way, and I have a gentle guide. Perhaps it was the intoxicating feeling of the hair that affected Amon's reaction. When the wind swirled and the river surface rolled up a strange whirlpool, he suddenly sensed a dangerous aura in the depths of the river. It was as if a frightening power was surging up and about to explode. Suddenly awakened, Amon grabbed Yu Numna and jumped into the cabin behind him. He shouted, "Watch out, everyone!" He raised his iron staff and jumped to the bow. The moment he raised his staff, the water in front of him suddenly parted. A huge tail rose up and lashed at the ferry. There was indeed a terrible monster lurking in the water. For some unknown reason, it suddenly attacked the ferry. Amon was too familiar with this trick. El-Mar, the king of ironbacks, loved to sneak up on them like this. This tail was much larger than El-Mar's bone-armored tail. Just the part that had flown out of the river was already more than 20 feet long and thicker than a bucket. There were palm-sized dark green scales on it, making it look like an astonishingly large snake's tail. It lashed down from the sky with the sound of air being compressed and exploding. Its speed and strength were imaginable. It seemed that it could smash the ferry into pieces with one blow. However, the tail did not hit the ferry. Suddenly, a transparent ice shield appeared in the air and blocked the attack. The ice shield shattered into countless pieces with a shrill sound. The tail continued to hit the turbid fog in the shape of a shield. The speed of breaking the fog slowed down a little, but the tail still came down heavily. The space seemed to be distorted. The tail was stopped for a moment by a strange force. Then Amon, who was standing on the bow, let out a deafening roar. Chapter 56. At the moment of life and death, Amon didn't care whether he was a sorcerer or not. His life was the most important thing. The ice shield formed by the water element wasn't very effective. It wasn't even a defensive magic. But it was the first magic Amon learned, and it was the fastest and easiest to use. He was in the middle of the Euphrates River, so it was the easiest to summon the power of water. Amon's reaction was a little late. He cast his fastest magic, forming an ice shield in the air to block the snake's tail. Then he cast an earth elemental shield to block the snake's tail. But the serpent's tail was so huge that its weight and speed alone could shatter the two barriers, but it bought Amon time to cast spatial freeze, freezing the huge serpent's tail in the air for a moment. Before the people on the boat could react, they heard Amon shout again. The bow of the boat suddenly sank. He had jumped high into the air, waving his staff. The branch-like staff emitted a faint layer of light and silently whipped the snake's tail in the air. A shockwave spread along the long body of the giant snake, and many snake scales were smashed and fell. Amon was only a 4th-level warrior in terms of strength. He hadn't had time to practice the 5th-level body arts yet. But as soon as the staff hit the snake's body, a pale blue flame spread along the snake's body. It was as if the staff had set the huge snake's tail on fire. Not to mention the monster in the river, even the seasoned warriors on the continent had never seen Amon fight like this. He swung his staff like an iron stick and cast a magic spell at close range. Moreover, it was the Sea of Fire spell, which was very difficult for advanced mages to cast. Even the flame was the hottest pale blue. It was impossible to describe the power of this strike. If the snake's tail was carved from a huge tree as thick as a bucket, it would be reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye. But the monster's body was so strong that only a few scales fell off. The air was filled with a pungent smell of burnt flesh. A muffled roar came from the bottom of the river. The snake's tail was lifted up by Amon's staff and quickly retracted back into the water. The flame made a sizzling sound as it touched the surface of the water. A cloud of steam rose from the Euphrates River. With a bang, the bow of the boat sank again. Amon jumped into the air and hit the snake's tail back into the water with his staff. Then he fell back down. Only then did the people on the boat recover from the shock. They screamed and cried. Due to the shaking of the boat, some people fell to the ground. The animals were also frightened and were crying. One of the boatmen shouted in horror, "Oh my God, it's a monster snake. It's the descendant of the river god Humbaba. Why did it appear in the day?" Some even knelt down to Amon and cried, "Great mage, please save us." Then more people began to cry to Amon, as if they were drowning and grasping at straws. They had seen the scene of Amon fighting with the serpent just now. It was the first time that Amon had performed magic in public. People called him the Great Mage. After all, he was not only protecting himself, but also the people on the boat. The cries of the people were immediately drowned out by a thunderous roar coming from the bottom of the water. A huge whirlpool suddenly appeared on the side of the boat, and the water surface sank. Then, a huge wave surged up and threw the boat high up into the air. What was strange was that the whirlpool did not tilt the ferry, and the huge wave did not overturn it either. The ferry maintained a stable position, and as the waves rose, it slid down the mountain-like wave as if it was gliding, and floated far upstream. Amon stood at the bow of the boat, holding his staff. His expression was solemn. It seemed that the staff in his hand was controlling the whole boat. Among the passengers, 2 warriors had already pulled out their swords and walked to the bow. They stood on either side of Amon to protect him. They were bodyguards of a merchant. At this moment, they could see that whether they could escape from the monster today depended on whether the mage could protect the ferry. If the boat capsized and everyone fell into the water, no one would be spared. Their swords could not attack the monster in the water, so they stood up to protect Amon. The ferry drifted down from the top of the waves and avoided capsizing. The thunderous roar from the bottom of the river kept rolling. The water became muddy and surged as if it was boiling. 2 walls of waves rose and hit the ferry from the left and right. In the waves, one could vaguely see the huge body of a dark green snake. It appeared on both sides of the ferry at the same time. The snake's length was really terrifying. Perhaps the snake was hurt by Amon's sea of fire, it hid under the water and did not come out. It used its terrifying body to stir up the waves. As long as the ferry was capsized, the mage would fall into the water and be at its mercy. Amon waved his staff forward. The water in front of him seemed to be flattened by an invisible giant hand. The 2 walls on the left and right instantly froze into dynamic ice sculptures. Some of the boatmen lost their balance and fell into the water. Fortunately, the boatman next to him grabbed the pole in time and climbed back up. No one dared to stand on the side of the boat anymore. Naturally, there was no one to push the boat. The ferry lost its power. The waves were frozen by icebound. The snake twisted its body and the ice sculpture immediately shattered. At this moment, Amon pointed his staff forward, and the boat was pulled by an invisible force and rushed forward at high speed, away from the water. Amon didn't want to be entangled with a water monster in the wide Euphrates River. He wanted to get to the other side as soon as possible. The ferry floated very fast on the water. Amon had the experience of controlling the invisible bone boat, so he could control it so well. He could escape quickly with the help of air and water magic, but it was difficult for him to use this kind of power to attack the monster living in the water. If an experienced mage had seen this scene, he would have doubted that Amon was a supreme mage. Although he was only casting advanced and elementary magic, he was able to control his power smoothly and skillfully. This was not something an advanced mage could do. Moreover, the staff in his hand didn't seem to be embedded with a parangan. Amon managed to do this by relying on the magic of the staff. He felt a little dizzy after casting powerful magic consecutively. But with his strong body, he gritted his teeth and stood firmly on the bow of the ferry. Had he not been a mid-ranked warrior, he would have collapsed to the ground, his body would have gone limp. The fairy was moving forward at high speed. Suddenly, a line of water appeared on the surface of the river downstream, shooting forward like an arrow, drawing a huge arc in the river. The body of the serpent finally emerged from the water, blocking Amon's way. The snake's body was more than 100 feet long. It stood in front of the ship and raised its head to reveal its true appearance. Its bloody mouth was wide open in mid-air, large enough to swallow a cow. Its long tongue was like a bloody rope, and its bull-sized eyes revealed an ominous glint. Ordinary snakes didn't roar, but when this monster raised its hideous head, its throat stirred the air and let out a cow's roar, which spread far across the Euphrates River. Seeing the monster snake reveal its terrifying appearance and block the way ahead, the people on the ship seemed so small and weak under its snake's kiss. Many people let out cries of despair. Amon was also frightened. He knew how powerful the serpent was. Just now, he had used all his strength to barely keep the fairy safe. However, the serpent was faster in the water than the fairy he was controlling, and it still blocked the way. Obviously, it was enraged. If he were standing on the bank, he could still fight it. Even if he couldn't win, he could still run away. But in the river, he had no confidence at all. But no matter what, he had to fight for his life. Amon had no other thoughts in his mind. He clenched his staff, pointed it forward, and gathered all his strength to launch a thunderous strike. He couldn't think about the 3 things Crazy Ol had warned him about. In this situation, he didn't want to use as little power as possible. He was afraid that he wouldn't be strong enough, and the slightest mistake would cost him his life. The hands of the 2 warriors holding their swords were trembling. Despair was written all over their faces. They could more or less see that the powerful mage had tried his best and was no match for the monster. In the midst of the cries of horror, Amon suddenly heard Yun Numna's voice. "Amon, the scrolls." How could he forget the 5 scrolls in his bag? Yun Numna's reminder came at the right time. Amon looked calm, but in fact he was extremely nervous. He had never used scrolls before. He couldn't even catch his breath after casting so many magic spells. Before Yun Numna's voice trailed off, Amon took out a handful of scrolls from his bag and threw them in front of him. No mage would use scrolls like he did. He threw all 5 scrolls in one go. The staff in his hand trembled as he activated the scrolls. The scrolls could only be unfurled one by one. As a result, Amon only activated 3 of them. The scrolls themselves were condensed by the caster's magic power. They didn't need to be performed by the caster himself, but the caster must also be able to control the magic power released by the scroll. These 3 scrolls were the best among the advanced magic scrolls. They also required a high degree of control. Amon could only activate them in a short period of time. He was already at his limit. He couldn't activate the other 2 scrolls. The first scroll was Space Shackle. There wasn't any explosion of power. The giant serpent's body was twisting and struggling on the surface of the water. The water was also surging violently, but it couldn't break free from that space for a while. This short period of time was enough for Amon to control it. The other 2 scrolls were unfurled one after another. The second scroll was not an attack scroll either. It was called Detect Interruption. The light and shadow around the giant serpent twisted into chaos. It couldn't see the river or the banks. It was as if it was suddenly in a strange place. It didn't know where Amon and the boat were. In fact, the giant serpent was still in the same place, but it was temporarily cut off from the outside world. These 2 scrolls were all auxiliary divine spells. They couldn't really cause damage or attack, but they were powerful and were used to complement other offensive divine spells. Amon picked up 8 scrolls in total. 5 of them were marked. The other 3 scrolls were not marked. They were found next to Nero's staff. In fact, the 8 scrolls were made by Nero. He was a master scroll maker in the team that hunted bear. How could he not prepare scrolls for other mages? These scrolls were not very useful against bear, so they were not used. But now, they were enough to deal with the monster in the Euphrates River. Both space imprisonment and detect interruption were standard scrolls. According to the records in the ancient books of magic, it didn't matter who made them, they were all the same. But the third scroll that Amon activated was Nero's own creation. It was called A Song of Ice and Fire. Unable to see the situation around it, the huge body of the strange snake that was temporarily imprisoned in an invisible space was suddenly surrounded by a piece of blue ice that rose from the surface of the water. The ice formed especially fast on the surface of the river, which increased the power of the magic. If the scroll was activated in a dry desert, it wouldn't have the same effect. The power of magic also depended on the environment. The ice layer was strengthened by space shackle, but it didn't wrap around the serpent's body. Instead, it was like a thick ice shell with a wide space inside. In an instant, a blue flame ignited in the space. The scorching flame was aimed at the giant serpent in the center of the ice shell, but it didn't melt the ice at all. There was a ball of scorching heat in the middle of the ice shell. The giant serpent had nowhere to hide. It let out a painful roar and writhed madly. The blue flame shrank as soon as it appeared and absorbed the serpent's body. It seemed that the heat of the flame had drilled into the serpent's body. The monster snake's twisting body naturally hit the ice shell, producing a series of cracking sounds. However, at the same time that the flames were shrinking, the ice layer was also spreading rapidly. The ice filled the interior space, tightly wrapping around the giant snake's body. The more than 100 feet long serpent's body was instantly charred from head to tail. The scorching heat was suddenly penetrated by a bone-chilling cold. A series of cracking sounds came from the ice layer. It was the sound of water vapor being compressed in the narrow space and exploding. The huge ice shell was blasted into countless pieces, and the huge creature that was frozen in the ice was also blasted into pieces, turning into charred pieces. The giant serpent was dead. Amon swayed and felt dizzy again. He almost lost his balance. He gasped when he saw the scene. The Song of Ice and Fire was so powerful that if he was careless and was surrounded by the scroll's divine arts, he would be dead for sure if he couldn't escape in time. Nero, the supreme mage whom Amon had never met before, was indeed a master of scroll making. This scroll combined two ordinary but powerful advanced magic, the Ice Seal, and the Sea of Fire, that Amon had just cast. But it was able to stimulate the Sea of Fire within the Ice Seal, and the alternating heat and cold could exert incredible damage. Although it was only an intermediate magic scroll, it was no less powerful than an ordinary supreme magic scroll. The terrifying and seemingly invincible giant serpent was destroyed just like that. Its broken bones scattered into the river. At the same time that Amon threw the scroll, the ship under his feet was still moving forward due to inertia. He waved his staff and a gust of wind rolled up the other two scrolls that fell from the sky. He caught them and stuffed them back into his leather pocket. Although Amon had killed the monster easily, he was shocked and surprised. He even felt a little regretful. He didn't have any experience in using scrolls. It was obviously a waste. If he only wanted to kill the giant serpent, he could have used the spatial shackle and the Song of Ice and Fire at the same time. If he only wanted to bypass the giant serpent and escape to the other side, he could have used the spatial shackle and the detection interception at the same time. In any case, he had wasted a precious scroll. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have enough magic power to activate 5 advanced scrolls in a row, the other 2 would have been wasted. However, Amon didn't feel that it was too much of a waste. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to use his full power in the situation just now. His priority was to save the lives of himself and the people on the ship. Otherwise, what would be the point of keeping the scrolls if he lost his life? He just needed to be more careful when he used the scrolls in the future. He couldn't just throw them all at random without any experience. The Euphrates River was calm again. 5 of the 6 poles had fallen into the water and couldn't be used anymore. Amon used his magic to push the ship to the other side. The ship passed through the muddy water. Pieces of ice floated on the surface of the water, some of which contained pieces of the monster serpent's body. Suddenly, Aman noticed something. He raised his staff and an object about 7 feet long flew out of the water. It was golden, translucent, and very thin. It fell into his hand and rolled into a small ball. Aman rubbed it in his hand and found that it was unusually tough. It looked like a piece of snake tendon. The monster serpent's body, which was over 100 feet long, had long been turned into ashes, but this piece of tendon was perfectly preserved under the power of the Song of Ice and Fire. It couldn't be an ordinary thing. He put it into his leather pocket. After this soul-stirring struggle, the ferryboat became quite still. Aman put away the snake tendon and turned around. Only then did he find that almost all the people in the cabin were kneeling before him. Even the 2 warriors who were guarding him put down their swords, took a few steps back, and knelt on the deck. Yun Nam Na was the only one who was still standing. There was a faint stench in the cabin. It turned out that several people had wet their pants in fear. "Why are you kneeling? There's no need to salute me like this. It's all right. Get up and see if anyone is hurt," said Aman, leaning on his staff and waving his hand. There was a trace of tiredness and weakness in his voice. As soon as he opened his mouth, the crowd shouted in unison, "O great mage, your power is amazing, thank you for saving us all, O great god Marduk, the great hero mage, you have saved us, thank the gods, thank you." The crowd was filled with the ecstasy of surviving a disaster, and many people even shed tears of excitement. Chapter 57. Why did Aman dress like this? He didn't want to reveal his identity as a mage, because he was a sorcerer who couldn't be seen in public. The ship owner's question aroused everyone's curiosity. Aman had to explain with a straight face, "I have a mission. It's related to the secrets of the gods. That's why I have to hide my identity. Please don't ask any more questions and don't tell anyone." Oh, so he was a mage on a secret mission. He didn't want to reveal his identity, but because of the monster, he had to use magic. Aman ordered everyone not to ask any more questions or to tell anyone. He had just shown powerful magic to save everyone's lives. Even if everyone had doubts, they could only say yes and didn't dare to say anything. But some people were still very puzzled. Even if a noble mage wanted to disguise himself, he could disguise himself as a noble, an ordinary official or a rich merchant. It wouldn't attract any attention. Why did Aman have to disguise himself as a lowly commoner? This didn't seem to make sense. Some people even had a trace of doubt in their hearts. Could he be a magician? However, it was only a fleeting thought. No one dared to confirm it, and no one dared to voice their suspicions. At this time, Yunamna walked to the bow of the ship and hugged Aman's arm. She said softly, "Our noble mage disguised himself in coarse linen clothes to carry out a secret mission for the kingdom. His mission is very important, and his identity must not be exposed. He should have killed all of you. But since the benevolent mage has saved you, he doesn't want to do so. If anyone leaks his identity, he will be severely punished by the kingdom." Her words shocked everyone. They saw Yunamna's face clearly. She was such a beautiful girl. She should be the mage's favorite maid. He would bring her with him when he went out in disguise. Everyone shut their mouths and kept quiet out of fear. No one dared to say anything else. Yunamna looked at the bow of the ship again. Suddenly, her face changed. She cried to Aman, "Little lamb, where's my lamb? It's gone. It must have fallen into the river. I wanted to take good care of it and not let it suffer anymore. Aman, I'm so sad." Yunamna cried as soon as she said she would. Her voice was so pleasant to the ear, but her expression was so pitiful. Anyone who saw her couldn't help but want to cry along with her. A merchant hurried to the bow of the ship and bowed to Aman, "Great mage, you have saved our lives and all my goods. Since you've lost something, you should be compensated by all of us. Let me compensate for her loss." The merchant had brought the largest amount of goods across the river. The 2 warriors were also his bodyguards. He was grateful to Aman for saving his life and the valuable goods on the ferry. He wanted to take this opportunity to repay Aman. It would be good if he could befriend a noble mage. Although Aman was carrying out a secret mission now, he would eventually complete the mission and return to the city or the shrine. If he could befriend Aman, it would be easier for him to do business in the city where Aman worked. What he wanted to compensate was not just a lamb, but a large sum of money to leave a lasting impression. Aman looked very young, probably only about 20 years old, but he had already mastered such powerful divine power. Moreover, he was definitely not an ordinary person. He casually threw out 3 precious scrolls without even batting an eyelid. The merchant was not like those ignorant people. He didn't suspect that Aman might be a sorcerer. Some people might become sorcerers without the permission of the shrine, but how could such a person have so many precious magic artifacts and use them without hesitation? Such a young mage could only be cultivated with the support of a huge shrine. Aman's identity must be very noble, and he must have a bright future ahead of him. The merchant was very sure of his judgment. As the merchant spoke, the servant next to him handed him a sheepskin bag. Looking at the heavy bag in his hand, he knew that it was full of gold coins. Aman was a little surprised and asked, "I lost the lamb because there was a monster in the river. Why do I need you to compensate me?" The merchant replied humbly, "If it weren't for you, the whole ship would have sunk to the bottom of the river. My life and everyone else's would be gone. The goods and money would no longer belong to me. Your courage and power saved us all. We should express our gratitude. Please don't refuse." The ship owner also tried to persuade him, "Dear mage, you should accept our gratitude. Otherwise, we will feel uneasy." As he spoke, his heart was still pounding. Yun Namna's words had scared him. The ship owner was very knowledgeable. He also guessed that Aman's identity must be very noble. The price he paid for using 3 scrolls to fight the monster was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. If he didn't express his gratitude properly, he was afraid that if he annoyed Aman, he would leave as soon as he got ashore. As the ship owner who couldn't escape, he would be in big trouble. He looked at the merchant and nodded, "All right then. Thank you. I bought that lamb for 2 silver coins. If you want to compensate me for my loss, then give me 2 silver coins." "That's fine," said the merchant, but I didn't want to refuse the merchant's kindness. His words stunned everyone on the ship. 2 silver coins were nothing to a noble mage. Aman should either accept the merchant's generous gift or refuse it outright to show his generosity. On the other hand, in the eyes of ordinary people, 2 silver coins for a lamb was expensive enough. It was clearly extortion. It was ridiculous for a noble mage to extort a small amount of money for a lamb. Except for Yun Namna, no one knew that Aman was telling the truth. Not everyone in the cabin saw Aman use the scrolls. Even if they did, they didn't know what was going on. Some even suspected that Aman was a sorcerer. But there were also experienced people who knew how precious the scrolls Aman used were. Yun Namna softly whispered in Aman's ear, "Lord Mage, we've lost more than a lamb. You've also used up 3 precious scrolls to kill the monster." Her voice was not loud, but everyone on the ship heard her clearly. Someone spoke, "Leskut Li, the rich merchant of Uruk, why did you only compensate the noble mage with a lamb? Why didn't you compensate him with the 3 magic scrolls?" Someone else said, "Ship owner, you're also a rich man. The mage saved your ferry. You should compensate him with those precious scrolls." No matter what they thought, they all wanted to thank Aman. They were also afraid that they might offend the disguised mage. Since the merchant and the ship owner were paying for the scrolls, why couldn't they be generous? The ship owner was sweating when he heard this. He wanted to throw the person who talked nonsense into the river. Merchant Neskut Li was also complaining in his heart. He wanted to take this opportunity to make friends with this young noble mage. But even if he sold all the goods he brought and the ship owner's ferry, he still wouldn't be able to pay for the scrolls. Magic scrolls were not ordinary commodities. Ordinary people couldn't buy them even if they wanted to. Only mages could use them. But as long as it was useful, it had a price. In the magic academies in the capital or the shrines in the big cities, the noble and wealthy nobles could ask for a scroll maker's help. Or they could spend a lot of money to hire someone to make it for them. No matter how they got it, it would cost them a lot. Amon waved his hand and said, I used the scrolls to save my own life. I don't need anyone to compensate me. Thank you for your kindness. If you really want to repay me, don't hinder me from completing my task. When you get off the ferry, don't tell anyone that I'm in disguise. That's all. The ship owner secretly wiped the sweat off his forehead. The merchant also breathed a sigh of relief and said gratefully, My name is Linescutly. I'm a merchant from Uruk. Dear mage, if you have the chance to pass by Uruk after completing your task, I will do my best to serve you. These words came from the bottom of his heart. Amon had no intention of asking the people on the ferry to compensate him for the scrolls. As for the lamb's 2 silver coins, in the merchant's eyes, it was only because of the noble identity of the owner. Amon smiled and nodded, all right, I'll keep that in mind. This continent was so strange to him, so it was good to know one more person. Except for Madanzo and the mysterious Yun-Numna, he didn't know anyone else. He also had a good impression of this merchant. The ferry arrived at the other side of the river. Everyone bowed to Amon to show their gratitude. Amon and Yun-Numna stood at the bow of the ferry and nodded with a smile. They were the last to get off the ferry. There was a town not far from the ferry on the other side of the river. Everyone on the ferry obeyed Amon's order and did not reveal his identity. At least in this town, no one said anything because the mage was still there. Someone on the other side of the river saw the thrilling fight from afar and asked the people who got off the ferry what happened. Everyone could only say that the monster appeared during the day and was killed by a mage on the ferry. However, the mage was on a secret mission and didn't want to show his face, so he left quietly after getting off the ferry. Although Amon did not reveal his identity, this matter could not be covered up. The news spread like wildfire. After getting off the ferry, Amon first went to the market to find a carriage for Yun-Numna. It was a long way from the capital, and he couldn't let a girl walk thousands of miles. At the market, he happened to see Linescutly directing a group of workers to load the goods from the ferry onto several carriages. Seeing Amon looking for a carriage, Linescutly took the initiative to come over and said, Sir, please take my carriage. It's a gift from me. It's my best carriage and horse. Amon shook his head, I'm just taking a short walk. You don't have to give me such a good carriage. The decoration on Linescutly's carriage was obviously that of a commoner. Although it was comfortable and luxurious, it couldn't compare to the carriage of a noble mage. Hearing Amon's words, Linescutly hurriedly said, There's no better carriage in this town. You can take this one for the time being. It's just a loan. You can use it whenever you need it. If you still remember me in the future, you can send someone to bring it back. Linescutly's idea was not bad. He might be able to find out Amon's identity through the carriage in the future. Amon thought for a moment and said, Well, thank you. I'll return the carriage and horse to you. His first stop was to find Madanzo, but sooner or later he would go to the Cape States of Iga to return Nero's staff. He would pass by this place again and return the carriage and horse on the way. When disembarking from the ferry, Amon made a decision. The second thing he would do in his travels on the continent was to fulfill Nero's last wish. Although Nero was one of the supreme mages who hunted down Bear, carrying out the decree of the oracle and the decree of the kingdom was not a personal vendetta. Knowing that he was going to die, he still obeyed the order without hesitation, which was admirable. It was the scroll left by Nero. Today, Amon saved Amon's life. If the merchant knew that he had to repay Amon, Amon should also repay Nero by sending his staff and ring to the shrine of Cape. He didn't stay in the town for long. He drove the carriage away from the ferry with Yun-Numna. Instead of taking the official road, he turned into a small path in the wilderness. The eastern bank of the Euphrates River was the territory of the city of Uruk. It was an open plain with pastures, farms, and low hills and forests. The land here was much more fertile than that around Duk. It was prosperous and prosperous. Aman didn't know how to drive a carriage. It took him half a day to barely control the reins and steer the horse along the road. He even used the power of telekinesis to control the horse. There was always a gust of wind beside the carriage to guide the way. Yun Namna lifted the curtain and smiled. Aman, my brave hero, handsome hunter, noble mage, you don't know how to drive a carriage, do you? Why didn't you use a whip instead of magic? A well-trained horse will know where to go as soon as it hears the whip. There's a whip in the carriage. I suggest you use the whip given to you by the shepherd in Som. When they were buying sheep outside Som, the shepherd gave a whip to Aman. Since then, he had kept it in his pocket, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Hearing Yun Namna's reminder, Aman took out the whip and was surprised. Then he took out something else from his pocket. It was the snake tendon he fished up from the river. The whip looked so similar to the tendon of the strange snake. Not only were they similar, but they were made of the same material. But there were also differences between the whip and the tendon. It was not curled into a ball, but spread out like a rope. It seemed to have been processed in some special way. Although Aman had the theoretical knowledge of making all kinds of magic artifacts, he couldn't figure out how the snake tendon was processed into a whip. After all, he had never used any artifacts to make a real whip. Aman had personally experienced the terror of the serpent. A shepherd had made a whip out of the serpent's tendon and gifted it to Aman. His identity must be extraordinary. Since Inanna had warned Aman, she must have known something. She must have other intentions for taking Aman out of the town to buy sheep. She must have other intentions. Aman's eyes were wide open. Yun Namna once said that her identity was mysterious and noble, and that even her name should not be mentioned easily. Now it seemed that Aman's experience was even more complicated. Aman changed the whip and gently cracked the whip. The two horses in front of the carriage galloped forward at a brisk pace. They didn't need to control the horses at all. Driving the carriage was very easy. The vast field was beautiful, and the horses ran happily. But Aman felt an inexplicable chill on the back of his neck. When he saw the whip, he realized that he seemed to have been used. When he walked out of the mountain, he met Yun Namna, the shepherd in Som, and the monster in the river. Everything seemed to be arranged by someone. Yun Namna's experience was not as simple as she said, and it was not a coincidence that she met Aman. No wonder Schrödinger warned him like that. Aman drove the carriage to a small path in the field. He wanted to avoid the people on the boat, and he also wanted to ask Yun Namna alone. But now he didn't dare to speak. What exactly was this mysterious and beautiful woman plotting against him? Yun Namna sat in the hood behind him. Aman's back was a bit stiff. After a while, he asked, Yun Namna, we're not on the main road to Babylon Kingdom. Do you know this road? Are you sure we're going the wrong way? Yun Namna put a hand on his shoulder. The road is under your feet. I'm your guide. Just go ahead. This road leads us to the east bank of the Euphrates River, bypassing the city of Uruk, and back to the main road to Babylon City. I've lost my lamb after crossing the river, but I still have you. My handsome Aman, why are you so nervous? What's stirring your heart? You must have something to ask me. Why don't you ask me? After crossing the river, Yun Namna reminded Aman of the strange whip, which was a hint. She knew that Aman must have many questions in his mind, so she smiled and asked him to speak first. Her hand was so soft that it should feel comfortable on his shoulder. But somehow, Aman felt a little scared, even more nervous than when he faced the monster snake in the river. But then he thought about it and realized that Yun Namna didn't mean him any harm. So he asked as naturally as possible, Yun Namna, how did you know I had the scroll? He had wanted to ask this question when he was on the boat, but it was not convenient to say it in front of so many people. Thanks to Yun Namna's reminder, Aman remembered to take out the scroll to kill the monster snake and save his life. But he had never opened his leather bag for Yun Namna to see, nor had he revealed his secret of magic. How did Yun Namna know that he had the scroll in his bag? Yun Namna gently rubbed Amon's shoulder, as if she was caressing him. You didn't tell me you knew magic. It's your secret. We all have our secrets, don't we? You used magic to kill the monster on the boat, and I know you have many precious parangons with you. It's normal for you to have the scroll to protect yourself, isn't it? You told everyone that you have a secret mission, and I'm still with you. You won't kill me, will you? Chapter Introduction of Characters. Chapter 58. Yun Namna's voice was sweet and delicate. She sounded scared, but her face showed no fear. Instead, she looked at Amon with interest and a faint smile. Amon twisted his neck and said, "Why should I kill you? It's not a bad thing to save a boat full of people." Yun Namna, can you tell me who the shepherd of Sam is? His whip is made of the tendons of a monster in the Euphrates River. You obviously know it. Why did you only tell me now? Did you also know that we would encounter monsters when we crossed the river? Are your experiences true? Who are you? Why did you come to me? Yun Namna smiled. Everyone has their own secrets. Amon, aren't you the same? You said it yourself, a mage with a secret mission. I want to thank you for everything you've done for me. As for what I said, it's all true. But it depends on how you interpret it. Maybe you'll understand it in the future. Amon, I'll keep my promise to repay you. You can ask me one thing. As long as it's within my power, I won't refuse, even if it's me you want. They had crossed the Euphrates River. Yun Namna didn't seem to care whether her identity was exposed or not. She just wanted to see if Amon could guess who she was. But she didn't tell him, as if she was deliberately teasing him. At this moment, a man's loud and clear voice came from afar. It was a good song, but the lyrics were not very pleasant. Which one have you ever loved never changed your heart? Once a young lover, how many times did he cry for you every year? The shepherd you loved, piled the most delicious pastries in front of you, slaughtered the most beautiful lambs to feed you, but in the end, he was whipped and turned into a wolf. The bird you loved, had its wings broken, the lion you raised, wandered with wounds. Hearing the voice, Yun Namna's face changed. She withdrew her hand from Amon's shoulder and stood up. Amon also looked back in the direction of the singing. He saw a convoy of carriages coming from the open river at the end of the field. The luxurious carriages decorated with gold embossments were flanked by guards of honor in bright armor. They looked like a king on an inspection tour. The carriage didn't have a compartment, and a gorgeous parasol was propped up. A man in his 30s was sitting in the carriage. He had a handsome face and a strong body, wearing a loose purple velvet robe. The coachman was a warrior who was more than 9 feet tall. He only wore a breastplate without a helmet, and there was a heavy bronze greatsword shining with silver light hanging from his waist. Beside him was a giant shield that was almost as tall as an ordinary person. He looked as majestic as a god, and no one dared to look at him directly. The singer was the man in the purple robe. He sang while sipping his wine, as if there was no one else. Seeing such a caravan coming from behind, Amon had already driven the carriage to the side of the road. However, Inanna shouted angrily, "Gilgamesh, you are really bold. How dare you sing such a song in front of me? Why did you come all the way from Uruk with your elite followers? What are you going to do?" The singer also saw Yun Namna. He stood up in the carriage and bowed, "Beautiful lady, you can call me Jill. I see your godlike face. May I know your name today?" Yun Namna jumped off the carriage and stood in the middle of the road, blocking the caravan. She sneered and replied, "I am Yun Namna." "Jill, Lord of Uruk, where are you going?" Amon, who was sitting in the carriage beside the road, was shocked. The owner of the caravan was Gilgamesh, the governor of Uruk of the kingdom of Babylon. He had heard Madanzo mention this famous figure. Some said that he was a 9th-level warrior, some said that he was a supreme mage, but Gilgamesh had never confirmed it himself. There was another person beside Gilgamesh who was also a well-known figure on the continent. He was Gilgamesh's childhood playmate and later became the captain of the city guard. His name was Enkidu. He was a 9th-level warrior and was known as the first warrior on the continent. The title was somewhat exaggerated, but it was true that Enkidu had never been defeated by anyone. Must go #Amon would never dare to provoke such a figure. With his status, he would only stay away from such a person. However, Numna didn't seem to be afraid at all. She just stood there with a straight face and stopped the whole caravan. It seemed that Gilgamesh knew her. He even stood up and saluted her in the carriage, but he asked her what her name was today. His manner was respectful, but his tone was a little teasing. The situation of the kingdom of Babylon was different from that of the empire of Igut. It was a united kingdom formed by many city-states. In wars, they acted in unison. There was also a council of city-states that made important decisions and were under the leadership of the king. In fact, the king played the role of the leader of the alliance. The lords of the city-states had great independence. Gilgamesh was a famous hero with a high reputation. Usually, he didn't even pay much attention to the king. He would only listen to his orders when it came to important decisions of the kingdom. However, Uruk was an important city in the defense line of the Euphrates River, so the lords of other city-states, including the king, didn't dare to offend him. Hearing the conversation between Numna and Gilgamesh, Amon began to suspect that Numna might be a royal princess. That was the only way to explain the situation. He already had this speculation when he saw Numna write her name in hieroglyphs. Gilgamesh ordered the caravan to stop, but he didn't get out of the carriage. He still bowed and said, "I received an urgent report on my way to patrol the city." The youngest son of Humbaba, the so-called patron of the Euphrates River, a ferocious snake, attacked the ferry during the day. Since Humbaba has violated the agreement of the gods, I can finally go and kill that 9-headed beast. Numna, do you want to go and watch the fun? Hearing this, Amon was startled again. He almost dropped the whip in his hand. Humbaba was the legendary patron of the Euphrates River, and Gilgamesh said he was going to kill it? Amon was filled with surprise and curiosity. He wanted to go and watch the fun, but his mind told him that he should leave as soon as possible. However, Numna was standing in the middle of the road, blocking his way. Amon could only hide by the roadside. Numna giggled, "Gilgamesh, are you going to kill Humbaba with Enkidu? It's not easy to deal with him. We have to chop off all 9 heads. Can you do it?" Gilgamesh squinted his slender eyes and stroked a ring on his finger. "I have to try. I've been wanting to kill that 9-headed snake for a long time. Don't forget that the cedar wood is the most important resource of Uruk. But Humbaba controls the shipping route. My people have been offering sacrifices to it every year, but it's insatiable. How many people have died in the bellies of its descendants?" Numna frowned, "But I heard that it's an agreement between Enlil and Marduk. The cedar woods to the east of the Euphrates River belong to Marduk, but the Euphrates River belongs to Humbaba. Humbaba is the guardian of Enlil's realm. The reason why you can't sail at night is because you refuse to build a shrine for Humbaba in Uruk." Gilgamesh snorted, "Does it really think of itself as a god? It's just a beast guarding the door. The shrine in Uruk only worships the true guardian, not the blackmailer. Why should it ask me to worship its statue in the kingdom of Marduk? Poor snake, does it think it can get its own realm just like that? It doesn't know who will sincerely offer sacrifices to it." Numna laughed again, "Yes, Humbaba has a lot of brains, but it's not easy to use them. But if you kill it, aren't you afraid of offending Enlil?" The coachman suddenly raised his head and said, "What happened at the ferry today? Humbaba has violated the agreement of the gods, so I'm going to kill him. As a god, Enlil can't go against his own oracle. My most beautiful girl, why are you worried about him? We are the ones facing a fierce battle, and we are also the ones facing danger. But today, I must take up the sword in my hand." Numna looked at the burly man with a faint smile. "Enkidu, you've always wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with the gods. Do you want to prove it by killing Humbaba?" The warrior named Enkidu said sternly, even if Humbaba has a shrine, how many people will sincerely offer sacrifices to him? Even if I don't have a shrine, how many people on both sides of the Euphrates River will sing songs of gratitude and praise for me? Yu Numna covered her mouth. Unfortunately, you're one step too late. The monster in the river has already been killed by a young hero. I was there at the time, and he escorted me safely across the river. You didn't become a hero who saved everyone on the boat, and now you want to mess with Humbaba? I don't think you can defeat it alone, but Gil might be able to. Enkidu stood up from the shaft of the carriage and turned to Gilgamesh. My lord, please allow me to challenge Humbaba alone. Gilgamesh glanced at Yu Numna and frowned slightly. Then he turned to Enkidu and said kindly, my best brother, of course I won't refuse your request, but I won't put you in danger either. You may be able to defeat Humbaba, but you won't be able to stop him from escaping. Please let me help you cut off his retreat, so that you can chop off all 9 of his heads with your own hands. That will be your achievement. Enkidu bowed, thank you, my lord. Gilgamesh waved his hand and said to Yu Numna, Humbaba's descendants won't allow people to cross the river at night. Humbaba's descendants don't allow people to cross the river at night. They kill one after another, creating endless disasters. Today, I'm going to cut off the source of this disaster. Yu Numna, are you trying to stop me? Yu Numna's face was as beautiful as a flower. She looked at Gilgamesh affectionately and said, why would I stop you? To be honest, I also want to see someone kill that 9-headed beast. Gil, you have the courage to do so. You're a hero. Thank you for inviting me to go with you. I want to witness this rare heroic feat with my own eyes. As she spoke, she lifted her skirt and jumped onto the shaft of the carriage. She walked past Enkidu and boarded the carriage. She waved her hand and said, Gilgamesh, let's go. I can't wait any longer. She actually left Amon behind and followed the carriage. Amon was a little puzzled, but at the same time, he felt relieved. The carriage continued to move forward. When they passed by Amon, he was a little nervous again. Gilgamesh asked, Yu Numna, you came here in this carriage. Aren't you going to take it with you? Inanna smiled and said, my lamb will find his own path and eventually understand what his mission is. Walking with the heroic Jill, I no longer need the protection of others. Gilgamesh smiled and said, with Enkidu, my carriage is a safe place. But, how can you need my protection? The carriage surrounded by the guards of honor had gone far away, leaving Amon alone. Yu Numna originally asked Amon to send her to the kingdom of Babylon, but now she left with Gilgamesh. If she was really a princess in distress and knew and trusted Gilgamesh, she wouldn't need a sorcerer like Amon under his protection. But she couldn't just leave without telling him. As soon as Amon thought of this, he heard Yu Numna's voice, I'll go and see how they kill the Hydra. You killed Humbaba's youngest son. If Humbaba finds out who did it, you'll be in danger when you cross the Euphrates River. I wish them success. Go on your way and go where you want to go. I will come back to you and fulfill my promise. The caravan had already disappeared out of sight, but Inanna's voice seemed to be ringing in his ears. Although it was only a secret message of the advanced message magic, it was very clever. Amon was startled again. Then he realized that since Yu Numna knew hieroglyphs and was of noble status, it was normal for her to be proficient in magic. But before he could finish his words, Gilgamesh interrupted him. He still didn't know who Yu Numna was. She always came and went in such a mysterious way. Seeing that the carriages were out of sight, Amon raised his whip and was about to drive the carriage. Suddenly, he raised his head alertly. A black dot appeared at the spot where the caravan had disappeared. The black dot quickly grew bigger and bigger. It was the figure of Enkidu, the warrior who had been driving the caravan just now. He was so tall and burly that he looked like a giant. Enkidu looked like he was just walking, but his speed was faster than a galloping horse. He could even catch up with a flying bird in the sky. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Amon's carriage. Every step he took was soundless, but Amon could feel a force that made the earth tremble. In front of this warrior, no one could even muster the courage to resist. When Aman saw Enkidu's face clearly, he had already put his hand into his bag and took out the advanced scroll, Space Turbulence, from the bone. He put it together with the other two advanced scrolls. If this 9th-level warrior was hostile to him, Aman could only hope to escape as fast as he could. But why did the greatest warrior of the continent come to him, a mere coachman? Was it Numna's order? Seeing Enkidu's speed, Aman even wondered if he would have the chance to use the scroll if Enkidu really wanted to attack him. Enkidu stood in front of the carriage like a small hill. Although his face was gloomy, he had no intention of attacking Aman. Holding a golden plate in his hands, he said coldly, "Coachman, you killed the monster in the Euphrates River, protected the passengers on the ship, and maintained the safety and dignity of the city. This is a reward from the governor. Please take it." Although the arrogant warrior said the word, "please," his tone sounded like an order that could not be disobeyed. Aman jumped off the carriage and took the golden plate with both hands. He replied respectfully, "City Lord Duo Shu, I'm teaching people to save myself." He could feel Enkidu's inexplicable hostility towards him. Under the pressure of this supreme warrior's gaze, even breathing became a little difficult. Enkidu stared at Aman and said coldly, "You should be praised for what you did. This is the governor's reward. Young sorcerer, you passed through the city under the protection of Numna. Go away now. The next time I see you, I'll kill you. Remember, a woman like Numna will never belong to you." After saying this, Enkidu turned around and left, quickly disappearing into the distant horizon. A gust of wind blew. Aman suddenly felt a chill. Just a few words had made him break out in a cold sweat. On the golden plate were 2 scrolls and 10 parangons. The scrolls were the space confinement and detection interruption scrolls he used in the river. Gilgamesh was well informed. He not only knew what happened on the Euphrates River, but also what kind of scrolls Aman used. He ordered Enkidu to deliver 2 of the scrolls to him and gave him 10 parangons as a token compensation for the other scroll. The value of the Song of Ice and Fire was probably much more than 10 parangons. It was a unique creation of Nero. Gilgamesh might not know what scroll it was, but he was being very generous. Maybe it was also because of Numna. Enlil had called Aman a sorcerer. Obviously, he already knew who he was. His tone was very unfriendly. He also said that Aman could pass through the city under the protection of Numna and that he would kill him the next time they met. This was an unexpected disaster for Aman. When had he ever offended this 9th-level supreme warrior, the captain of the city guard? Enkidu's last words were clearly a warning to Aman not to have any improper thoughts about Numna. Aman asked himself if he had any improper thoughts about Numna. It was really troublesome to be with this woman. First, someone tried to kill him outside Som. Then, he was attacked by a monster when he was crossing the river. Now, he was inexplicably threatened by a supreme warrior. Fortunately, he didn't have to travel with her anymore. Otherwise, as a 5th-level sorcerer, Aman couldn't afford to lose his life. More or less, Aman was belittling himself. Today, he met one of the most powerful beings on the continent. In fact, a 5th-level sorcerer with the power of a 5th-level warrior was not to be underestimated in any city on the continent. The cold sweat had dried up. Aman sat in the carriage and asked himself a few questions. Was Numna hostile to him? No, she wasn't. Did Numna do something wrong? No, she didn't do anything wrong. Did he do something wrong? No, he didn't do anything wrong. Did he feel sorry for Numna? No, he just helped her. He didn't offend her at all. Thinking of this, Aman calmed down. He whipped the horse and drove the carriage away. He saw clearly that Gilgamesh's caravan left the main road and crossed the fields towards the upper reaches of the Euphrates River. According to Numna, they could bypass Uruk and return to the main road. Aman just wanted to go as fast as possible. The whip cracked and the horses galloped. Nescot's gift was indeed one of the best horses. They galloped all the way from afternoon to dusk. The carriage finally slowed down after dark. The horses were tired. If they continued to gallop, they wouldn't be able to bear it. He had gone far enough. Enkidu said that Aman could pass through the city this time, so he didn't need to be too afraid. Aman just wanted to get as far away from the potential dangers as possible. Nothing happened along the way. After dark, Aman found a secluded forest far away from the roadside. He drove the carriage into the forest and hid it. Then he found a water source nearby to drink the horses. He also needed a good rest. The fight with the serpent during the day had consumed a lot of his energy. After galloping, he felt a little dizzy. In the middle of the night, Aman slept in the carriage. When he woke up, he still felt a little dizzy. He sat cross-legged and began to practice basic meditation. Suddenly, he felt a tremor in his soul. Activating the detection magic to increase his senses to the most sensitive state, he heard various sounds coming from afar. There were the terrible roars of monsters, like the neighing of thousands of bison. There were also the shouts of warriors, which vaguely sounded like Enkidu's voice. There were also the sounds of crashing and cracking. Was Enkidu really fighting with Humbaba, the nine-headed serpent, the patron of the Euphrates River? Could he kill it? Or would he be killed by the serpent? The voice came from a very far place. Even with detection magic, it was barely audible, but it was still shocking. Aman had killed Humbaba's youngest son. If he passed by the Euphrates River in the future, he might face the revenge of the river god. So he should hope that someone could kill Humbaba. And since Enkidu had threatened Aman, he should also hope that Enkidu would be killed by the serpent. But when Aman heard the sound of fighting, he still hoped that Enkidu could kill the serpent. As for the warrior's threat, he didn't care too much about it. The continent was so big that he could go anywhere he wanted. It was almost impossible for him to have any dealings with the captain of the city guard. Even if he went to the city of Uruk, he might not meet him. If he did, he would just stay as far away from him as possible. Enkidu was just threatening him. There was no way Aman would go after such an insignificant figure himself. After all, Aman was not Humbaba. The fight in the distance didn't end until dawn. One could imagine how tragic it must have been. Aman was fascinated by the story. He couldn't help but think of what Crazy Ol had said. Whether it was body arts or magic arts, once they reached the 9th level, they would be at the peak of the mortal world. They would even have the power to fight against the gods and were called demigods. Crazy Ol also suspected that some of the so-called gods were only demigods, not real gods. Now it seemed that the so-called Humbaba of the Euphrates River might be a demigod. Enkidu, a 9th level supreme warrior, dared to kill him, so he should know where the nest of the Hydra was. Gilgamesh, Lord of Uruk city of the Kingdom of Babylon. Enkidu, captain of the city guard of Uruk of the Kingdom of Babylon. 9th level warrior, known as the first warrior on the continent. Chapter 59. Yesterday, Aman overheard a conversation between Yun Namna and Gilgamesh, which was related to the secrets of the gods. The relationship between Marduk and Enlil did not seem to be very good, and Humbaba was the guardian of Enlil's divine realm. He wanted to build his own shrine in Uruk so that he could have a divine realm as well, but Gilgamesh rejected him. What was a divine realm? Was it the realm where the kingdoms built shrines for the gods? Aman still did not know what was going on. Humbaba accepted sacrifices from the people along the river, and his descendants were not allowed to attack people during the day. This seemed to be an agreement of the gods. Yesterday, a strange snake broke the agreement. Although it was killed by Aman, Gilgamesh seized the opportunity to kill Humbaba with Enkidu. Aman was right. Gilgamesh had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Since the day he became the governor of Uruk, he had wanted to kill Humbaba. Like the city of Saya in the Kingdom of Babylon, the city of Uruk also produced precious cedar wood in large quantities. Saya's cedar wood had to be cut in the mountains and transported out, which was very expensive. But the conditions in Uruk were much better. Lumberjacks only needed to cut down trees from the mountains along the river, then put them into logs and let them float down the Euphrates River. When the water was calm downstream, the logs would be hauled to the shore by special boats. Cedar wood was not only a precious wood, but also a material for chariots and warships. It was a very important economic and strategic resource and one of the main products of Uruk. But Humbaba and his descendants lived in the river. Every year, herds of cattle and sheep had to be sacrificed to them in order to sail safely during the day. But at night, any carelessness could lead to death. As the governor of Uruk, Gilgamesh had long wanted to eliminate this threat. After using detection magic for a long time, the sound of fighting in the distance finally stopped. When Aman came back to his senses, it was already dawn. Although he had rested for a night, he felt even more tired than yesterday. He felt dizzy and even a little unstable, not only because of the indescribable shock he felt, but also because he had overused the power of magic for a day and a night. It was the first time Aman had encountered such a situation. He almost suspected that he was sick. It seemed that he still lacked experience in using magic. Last night, he had used detection magic more than he could bear, but it happened slowly and unconsciously. When he came to himself, he was already very weak. Any mage in such a situation would need a long rest to recover. Fortunately, Aman had the physical strength of an advanced warrior, so he did not collapse on the spot. Aman forced himself to stay awake and drove the carriage on its way. Misfortune never comes alone. He found that the two horses were also listless. White steam was coming out of their noses and they looked very tired. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't run fast and even had diarrhea on the way. Horses were delicate animals. Aman had driven the carriage too hard yesterday. If it had been an ordinary horse, it would have died of exhaustion. Even these two horses couldn't bear it. They were artificially bred horses, but they didn't eat hay yesterday. They only drank some spring water and ate grass with dew on it in the morning. After a day of crazy running, they were also showing symptoms of weakness. Both the man and the horses were in such a state. Aman knew that he couldn't continue in this condition. He had to find a place to rest, or he would be in danger if he encountered an accident. Fortunately, this place was very far from Uruk and the place was very remote. He wanted to find a farmer who would pay him enough money to stay for a few days to recuperate. At the same time, he wanted to feed his horse and bring enough fodder with him when he left. He was really lucky. Before noon, he saw a farm at the foot of a hill in the distance. The house was large and beautiful. On the left was a continuous stretch of farmland, and on the right was a hillside with herds of cattle and sheep. There was a path leading to the farm. Aman cracked his whip and the two horses turned and slowly pulled the carriage towards the farm. They passed through the fence and came to the flat ground in front of the house. A carriage entered the farm. The people in the house were alarmed. Several people came out of the house to see what was going on. Aman stopped the carriage and was about to explain the purpose of his visit when he found that the two men in front had already knelt down and saluted. "My dear lord, why have you come to our house?" It was a coincidence that the two men who knelt down were the two warriors who had been guarding Aman on the ferry. They were the bodyguards that Lescut had hired along the way. They no longer had their swords and were dressed like farmers, but their clothes were very clean and there were simple embroidery on their collars and cuffs. Behind them were probably their family members and the servants of the farm. When they saw the two men kneeling down, they also followed suit and knelt down to pay their respects. There was no other place in the field except for the farm at the foot of the hill. Since he had encountered Aman, it was too late to hide. He put down the whip and got off the carriage. "What a coincidence. I met you again here. My horse is sick and needs to be fed. I am also a little tired from the long journey. I want to find a place to stay for a few days. I will pay you enough." The two men said in unison, "My dear lord, it is our honor to have your carriage parked in front of our house. Why are you talking about payment? You saved our lives and we should repay you. Please come in, your horse will also receive the best care." Aman stayed at the brothers' farm. He had only wanted to stay for a day or two, but he had not fully recovered from the excessive consumption of magic power. His body felt uncomfortable and he stayed for more than 10 days in a row. The two brothers treated Aman with great respect. They let him stay in the best room, eat and use the best things in the house. The two brothers were called Cain and Abel. They lived in a large farmhouse. They shared a hall, but the house was divided into two parts, each with its own staircase. Aman lived on the floor above Abel's house. The two brothers were actually nobles, but their family had long been in decline. All that was left of the family's territory was this farm and a pasture outside. Since the farm and the pasture were next to each other, the two brothers lived together after they separated. The farmland was given to Cain and the pasture to Abel. On his deathbed, their father told them to live in harmony and help each other. They had servants to take care of the farmland and graze the cattle and sheep. Occasionally, the two brothers would work in the fields and pasture themselves. More often than not, they liked to go out and look for various opportunities, such as serving the kingdom to restore the honor of their ancestors and revitalize their family. Although the two brothers' family was in ruins, they had the opportunity to learn body arts when they were young. Now they were both second-level warriors. They didn't have to worry about food and clothing, but they weren't rich. Traveling on a long journey cost a lot of money. On their way back, they ran out of money, so they were hired by a merchant as bodyguards. They crossed the desert and crossed the Euphrates River to deliver goods safely to the city of Uruk. Unexpectedly, they encountered a monster on the river. If it weren't for Aman, they wouldn't have made it back. Usually, when they talked together, the two brothers were very respectful. They answered whatever Aman asked them, for fear that their explanations were not detailed enough and would offend the esteemed mage. Aman did learn a lot about the kingdom of Babylon and the city of Uruk. At least he knew about the feud between the so-called god of the Euphrates River, Humbaba, and the city of Uruk. He also knew why Gilgamesh wanted to kill Humbaba. Aman also heard something interesting. He finally confirmed the identity of Numna. The beautiful girl should be Princess Sisera, the sister of the king of Babylon, King Hammurabi II. It was said that Princess Sisera was amazingly beautiful, but she was romantic by nature and did not like the life in the palace. She often traveled to various places and yearned for the heroic stories in myths and legends. She also liked to disguise herself as a commoner girl and wandered the streets and fields, seducing the hearts of many men. Because of her identity, there was no need to explain why. Those men who pursued Princess Sisera like a commoner girl, including those who harbored evil intentions towards her, did not have a good ending. When Gilgamesh met Numna, he sang a song. If the lyrics were about Princess Sisera, everyone in the kingdom would know what it meant. Another important piece of information was that Princess Sisera was Gilgamesh's fiancée. This marriage was arranged by the old king Hammurabi I. The purpose of this marriage was, of course, to win over the most famous hero of the kingdom. He also promised another city in the kingdom as the princess's dowry. This political marriage would not only strengthen the rule of the kingdom of Babylon, but also better control the important city of Uruk, which guarded the throat of the Euphrates River. To the west of the Euphrates River, across the desert was the border with the empire of Igut and the Hittite kingdom. Since the marriage had been arranged, the parties involved could not refuse. It seemed that no one had any reason to object. One was the most beautiful princess of the kingdom, the other was the most famous hero of the kingdom. However, after the death of the old king Hammurabi I, 3 years ago, the situation changed subtly. Hammurabi II, the eldest son of Hammurabi I, succeeded the throne. He was already very old, but he did not have any children of his own. Thus, the fight for the throne of Babylon was foreshadowed. Those who were qualified to participate in the fight for the throne were Princess Sisera and the king's nephews. The old king had only 2 adult children. His eldest son was Hammurabi II, who was almost 70 years old. His other daughter was Princess Sisera, who was born to his favorite concubine in his later years. She was not even 20 years old yet. Such a huge age difference was not uncommon in the royal family. The old king had many concubines, but he only had 2 children in his later years. Princess Sisela had publicly stated that she was not interested in power. She only wanted to leave the capital and have fun. She did not want to marry at such a young age. She looked like a mischievous girl. There was a rumor in the kingdom that some political enemies wanted to assassinate the princess when she was away from home. There was another rumor that if Gilgamesh married Princess Sisela, he might usurp the throne of Babylon kingdom. No one knew who started the rumor. Gilgamesh was very unhappy with the rumor. He was not in a hurry to marry Princess Sisela, so the marriage was delayed. Princess Sisela had disguised herself and left the palace for some time. It was said that she did not return to the palace from last summer to this winter. She was probably playing pranks as a commoner again. She did not look like a noble princess at all. It was said that Princess Sisela was innocent and romantic. She had attracted the tears of many infatuated men in the kingdom. Some people said that it was improper and dangerous for her to behave like this. Her political enemies would take this opportunity to assassinate her. After hearing the rumor, Aman was sure that Numna was Princess Sisela. This was the only way to explain what he saw. Why Numna wrote her name in hieroglyphs with a mark that only gods or nobles could use. Why did she know Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh sang a song like that, but he bowed to her and invited her to travel with him. Enkidu knew that Aman was a sorcerer, but he said that he was traveling under the protection of Numna. He also threatened Aman not to have any improper thoughts, or he would kill him. The reason was simple. Princess Sisela was Gilgamesh's fiancée. Everything made sense now. Now that he knew that Numna was Princess Sisela, Aman let out a sigh and stopped thinking about it. Maybe he was just one of the many people that the romantic and naughty princess teased in the kingdom. Even if they arrived at Babylon city, Aman could not go to the palace to look for her. As for the reward that Numna promised him, he did not want it either. But he had a good impression of Numna. At least the stroll in the wilderness was beautiful. The pancakes that she gave him were the most delicious that Aman had ever tasted. She had not done anything wrong to him. She had gone back on her word to protect a magician who had exposed his identity safely through Uruk city. Keeping this feeling and gratitude in his heart, he didn't want to think too much about it. All he could do was rest and recuperate in the 2 brothers' farm. The 2 brothers took good care of Aman. They provided him with a comfortable place to hide and recover his magic power. Aman was grateful from the bottom of his heart. When he was on the ferry, the 2 brothers walked up to the bow of the ferry and guarded him. The others were hiding in the cabin in panic. Aman was very grateful to them. Then something happened, which made Aman, who was recuperating, decide to repay them. On the 7th day after Aman moved into the farm, messengers from the city arrived on the road outside the farm. The governor of the city sent many messengers with flags to every village in the city to announce 2 pieces of news. The first news: 7 days ago, Humbaba's descendant, a ferocious snake, attacked the ferry during the day and was killed by a sorcerer on the spot. Gilgamesh made an announcement to the entire city, stating Aman's identity as a sorcerer, but did not mention his name. Gilgamesh did not hide Aman's identity, but the messengers did not say what happened to the sorcerer. People whispered that the sorcerer had left quietly after disembarking from the ferry. It had been 7 days, and he was probably far away from the territory of Uruk. A magician had slain a monster and saved all the people on the ship. This was a shocking thing, and it was even indescribably absurd. But the second news attracted people's attention. 7 days ago, the captain of the city's guards, Lord Enkidu, killed Humbaba, the god of the Euphrates River. He cut off all 9 of Humbaba's heads and made a war drum out of the snake's skin and drumsticks out of the snake's bones. He also extracted 9 snake tendons and 36 fangs. Lord Gilgamesh fought side by side with Enkidu and blocked Humbaba's escape route. In the end, Enkidu cut off all of Humbaba's heads. It was a heroic feat that shocked the world. As soon as the news spread, the names of Enkidu and Gilgamesh became gods in the hearts of the people of Uruk. It was said that Lord Gilgamesh made a decision to divide the spoils of war into 3 portions, each containing 3 snake tendons and 4 fangs. One portion would be kept in Uruk as a permanent memorial, one would be dedicated to the great Marduk, and one would be sent to the palace of Babylon as a gift for his fiancée, Princess Sisela. Recently, the news that Gilgamesh would go to the shrine of Marduk and the palace of Babylon in the name of a gift spread, not only in Uruk, but also in the entire kingdom of Babylon. In every city-state and even the most remote villages, people were excitedly talking about this grand event that had not been seen for many years. The people of Babylon seemed to be far away from Ammon, who lived in the farm, but now he was in an awkward situation. The messenger of the city came to the gate of the farm and read the announcement of Lord Gilgamesh. He heard it clearly from upstairs, and the 2 brothers who were on the ferry at that time naturally knew who he was. They had taken a sorcerer into their home and given him the best hospitality. If they didn't know about it, they could still explain it, but now that they knew about the announcement of the city, what they should do was probably capture Ammon and hand him over to the shrine of the city. The 2 brothers had seen Ammon's ability, and they knew that they were no match for him. Of course, they couldn't do that, but it was not appropriate for them to keep Ammon. Ammon didn't want to cause trouble for them either. After watching the messenger go away from the window upstairs, he had already planned to pack his things and leave. However, when the 2 brothers returned home, they acted as if nothing had happened. They still respectfully invited Ammon downstairs for dinner. The dinner was more sumptuous than usual, and they didn't mention the announcement at all. During dinner, Ammon tactfully expressed his gratitude and said goodbye. He planned to leave immediately, and he didn't even want to stay for one more night. However, the 2 brothers sent everyone away. Abel said very sincerely in front of Ammon, "Our benefactor, please don't doubt our sincerity in entertaining you. You saved our lives, and your arrival is a blessing to us. In fact, we can see that you haven't been feeling well these days and need a good rest. Your horses are also sick, and the groom in the farm will definitely feed them well and carry you on your future journey. Please don't worry about anything. Stay here until you are fully recovered, and the journey may be smoother." Abel was obviously hinting to Ammon that the 2 brothers already knew that he was a magician, and it was not convenient for him to continue on his journey. They wouldn't mind, and they wouldn't reveal Ammon's identity. They would still treat him respectfully and repay him for saving their lives. Now that the news had spread throughout the city, if Ammon returned to the main road, someone might recognize him. It should be safer to completely recuperate before continuing on his journey. This was indeed a wiser choice for Ammon. Although he hadn't fully recovered, he wasn't afraid of the 2 brothers. Everyone in the farm was within the range of Ammon's detection magic. In this remote place, even if something happened, it would be very convenient for him to hide in the nearby fields and forests. Ammon thought about it and finally nodded, "Thank you for your kindness. I will definitely repay you. If you have any requests, please don't hesitate to ask. I will do my best to do it." He didn't mean anything by saying this. Although Ammon's clothes were ordinary, he was definitely rich. He had enough financial resources to heavily reward the 2 brothers, even if he had to buy a farm several times larger than it was now. Ammon's words moved the brother. After dinner, Cain called his brother Abel to the field and discussed with him, "Ammon asked us to ask for anything. My dear brother, what should we take this opportunity to ask him for?" Abel shook his head and said, "Although Ammon is a sorcerer, he can afford scrolls. He should be very rich. But we entertain him to repay him for saving our lives. How can we covet his money?" Cain patted his brother on the shoulder and said, "You misunderstand. How can I want his money? We all saw it on the ship. He is such an excellent sorcerer, and he has mastered such a powerful and magical power. Don't forget, we are also qualified to learn divine incantations, and we have even registered our names in the ritual records of the shrine, but no one will teach us divine incantations." Abel also sighed and said, "Yes, grandfather's friend, the respected old priest, has passed away." The conversation between the 2 brothers also touched on the past. Only nobles were qualified to learn magic, but it didn't mean that all nobles could learn magic at will. This required the permission of the shrine. To accept the awakening ceremony, there must also be a clear registration, which was equivalent to being recognized. Therefore, it was very difficult to fake the identity of a mage. Every mage's origin was recorded in the records, such as the city-state, the shrine, and the priest who held the awakening ceremony. These records were very clear. Chapter 60. At that time, the two brothers were still young, and the awakening of the power was not successful. Then their grandfather passed away. Although the family did not lose their noble status, they lost their title. Their status was similar to that of a well-off commoner, except that they did not have to pay the taxes of ordinary commoners. In theory, the two brothers could practice magic, but after losing their title, no priest in the shrine would continue to teach them. If they had awakened their power, they could continue to practice magic. It was not illegal, but it would be difficult for them to achieve higher achievements, not to mention that the awakening ceremony did not succeed. Cain whispered in Abel's ear, "My brother, don't forget that our names have been registered in the ritual records of the shrine. If we learn magic, it will be completely legal. If we have the opportunity to become advanced mages, we can completely restore the title of our ancestors. Our family's status will also be more glorious than before. We don't have to work as farmers and shepherds anymore. Now, there is a rare opportunity in front of us. We can ask Ammon to awaken our power and teach us magic." Abel had nothing to ask from Ammon, but Cain's persuasion finally moved his brother. For ordinary people, mastering the magical power was as fascinating as crazy old trying to unlock the secrets of the gods. Whether it was Medanzo, who was not qualified to learn magic, or Link, the chief of the savage tribe in the mountains, they all asked Ammon to learn magic when they saw the opportunity, not to mention Abel and Cain, who were qualified to learn magic but had no place to learn it. The two brothers discussed until midnight and decided to go to Ammon early the next morning and present their respective gifts. Ammon heard what they said in the field and decided to agree to the two brothers' request. The two brothers were qualified to learn magic, so doing this would not bring them any trouble. It should be the best repayment. The next morning, Ammon left the farmhouse and went for a walk in the pasture. He deliberately went to a place far away from people's eyes and ears. As he expected, the two brothers followed him with their gifts. They knelt in front of Ammon and said, "Dear Lord, please accept our most sincere offerings. Although this gift isn't precious, it's something that we've worked hard for, and it represents our true hearts." Cain offered a bunch of golden ears of grain. He was a farmer, and sometimes he worked in the fields himself, so it could be said that the grain was planted by him. Abel slaughtered the first lamb born in his flock this year, marinated the mutton into jerky, and boiled the fat into mature oil for Ammon. Ammon looked at them and smiled. He tapped the branch staff in his hand and said, "Your hospitality is already the best gift. Since I promised to agree to your request, I will naturally keep my word. I know why you're here. You want me to hold a power awakening ceremony for you and teach you divine arts. That's totally fine." Cain exclaimed, "You can see our hearts before we even open our mouths. Are you an emissary of God?" "No, in my mind, you're the symbol of the God who gives us power." He was afraid that Ammon would be afraid of his identity as a sorcerer, so he deliberately said such words. In fact, Ammon had heard the same words from Link and Medanzo, but Cain's tone was not so honest. Abel also prostrated and said, "Thank you, dear Lord. I will always remember you in my heart. It's you who gave us life and gave us magical power." Ammon waved his hand and said, "Don't be so quick to thank me. I promised to hold a power awakening ceremony for you, but it's up to you whether you can succeed or not. Not everyone can pass the test to learn divine arts. Get up first. Tonight at the foot of the hill behind the farm, I'll prepare for the ceremony, but first you have to promise me 2 conditions." The two brothers said together, "What conditions do you have, Lord? Please tell us." Ammon thought for a moment and said, "First, you can only practice according to the way I teach you. Don't go on any other path. You must have a firm belief and see it as the only source of power. Second, you can't draw my face or make a statue of me, or show my face and name to others. The reason why Aman put forward the first condition was very simple. He wanted to awaken the power of two sides for the two brothers. He would only teach them the path of practice that he had confirmed himself. He had also said the same thing to Link. As for the second condition, it was easy to understand. Aman was a sorcerer, and his deeds on the ferry had been publicized by the city of Uruk. Naturally, he didn't want anyone to know his face and name. The two brothers immediately nodded and agreed. Although Aman's first condition was special, they had nowhere else to learn, so there was no need to consider other options. On the way back, Aman took the gifts and said, "Thank you. I just happened to need these things on the road, so I'll accept them." He returned the ears of wheat to Cain because he really didn't need them on the road. That night, the moonlight illuminated the treetops in the forest. Abel and Cain came to the forest clearing at the foot of the hill. Aman was already waiting there, with his branch-shaped magic staff in front of him. Aman had always been a man of few words. When he saw the two brothers coming, he waved his hand and said, "The awakening ceremony of the power will begin now. My staff is its source. This is the first ceremony. Don't think about what kind of power you will awaken. It is both the power given by the gods and the power sleeping in the blood. When the power is awakened, it will also awaken the desire. This desire comes from both the body and the soul. It is one side of the same. You must learn how to face it and not be controlled by it." Awakening the power through the ceremony is only the first step. In fact, this test is not a temporary one. It will run through your whole life, even until you live forever. Pray to my staff. Please examine your body and mind. The one who gave you the power is not any known god. This kind of prayer may be difficult, but I hope you can find that state of focus and devotion. Aman now had a new understanding of the various tests in the practice of divine arts. Whether it was the awakening of desire, or the firmness of faith, or the temptation of the devil, they all had two meanings. The first meaning meant that when practicing the basic meditation of divine arts, one would not be controlled by it and could continue to practice more advanced divine arts. The second meaning was more complicated. It did not mean that the test would disappear after passing the form. It would run through everyone's faith from beginning to end. Just like the temptation of the devil would always exist, and desire would always accompany people's body and mind. Aman stayed in the farm for another 7 days. With the help of the magic staff, the two brothers' bodies and minds showed signs of budding power. Aman also completely recovered. He stayed in the farm for a total of half a month. He felt that his energy and physical strength had returned to their best state. Even his power was vaguely stronger than before. He was a little surprised that it took him so long. In fact, Aman did not know that overusing magic beyond the limit was very dangerous for a mage. It would put them in a state of weakness, unable to protect themselves. In the same situation, an ordinary mage would probably need 2 or 3 months to recover. In just half a month, he was back on the road again. This speed was amazing, not only because of the training of body arts, but also because of his unusual way of practice. Before Aman left, he left a parangan for the two brothers. His purpose was to let them continue to awaken the power through it. Aman could not leave the staff here. The most difficult first step had been taken. The rest was up to the two brothers. They had to face the test of desire on their own. 2 parangans were enough to compensate for the brothers' hospitality. He did not want to accept it. Although he was not rich, he still had the parangans collected by his ancestors. However, Aman persuaded him to leave the parangans, telling him that he would need the parangans when embedding the staff in the future, and the cost would be much more expensive than 1 parangan. Aman was very thoughtful. He even thought that the two brothers might not be able to afford a decent staff after becoming mages, so he taught them the skill of making staffs. Before becoming advanced mages, they would not have the ability to make a staff. But it did not matter. Aman was used to practicing magic without the help of a staff. Naturally, he also asked his disciples to practice the same way. He awakened the power of two sides for the two brothers. He found that the two brothers had their own differences. Abel was better at mastering magic skills, while Cain's talent was more focused on body arts. The situation of the two brothers reminded Aman of Bayer's commentary on the practice of the power of two sides. Everyone may focus on their own abilities, but this does not affect the practice of the power of two sides. If you want to use any ability to the extreme, you may not be able to do it even if you spend a lifetime. This path itself is so difficult, so it is reasonable to first reach the most basic requirements and then focus on the next. Aman left the two brothers with different methods of practicing the power of 1 to 6 levels. The main reason he did this was to confirm Bayer's speculation. Aman's situation was somewhat different from Bayer's. Crazy Ol wanted him to become an encyclopedic master of magic and explore the path that Bayer had not finished. So he wanted to try all kinds of possibilities. Therefore, Bayer's commentary could only be confirmed in the case of the two brothers. Aman, whose mission was to unravel the secrets of the gods, could not focus too much on one path. The two brothers sent Aman far away until he was out of the jurisdiction of Uruk and on the official road to Babylon city. Although Aman was a sorcerer, he did not encourage the two of them to offend or blaspheme any of the gods. He only awakened their power and taught them all the training content before becoming a supreme mage. This was something that could not be learned in any shrine at once. The gratitude in the hearts of Abel and Cain could be imagined. When they said goodbye, they said to Aman, "You are our eternal benefactor. You shine with the light of the gods." Aman drove the carriage on. No one in the vast kingdom knew who he was, so Aman did not encounter any trouble along the way. He passed through Laga, Nippur, Kish, and other cities. It took him more than 3 months to reach the capital of Babylon city. At this time, Aman was no longer the boy who had just walked out of the mountains. His temperament seemed to have matured a lot. After experiencing so many things, he began to gradually understand this strange and vast world. Traveling in the continent was indeed a fortune. He understood what the so-called devil's temptation was. He could advance by passing the test when practicing magic, but the test was still there. He was also trying to understand and verify what he said to the two brothers. Aman was not stupid. The experience along the way had taught him many things. He always paid attention to the thoughts and desires of the people around him. In his eyes, everything was so novel. There was always something new under the sun. If one could not see it, it could only mean that one was not attentive enough to experience it. Aman walked slowly because he was waiting. Schrödinger had said that it would come back for him, but the cat never showed up. Aman missed Schrödinger a little. He even wanted to go back to Sam, where the cat had left. Could the cat cross the Euphrates River and catch up with Aman? But Aman suppressed this thought and continued on his way to the capital. He would think about it when he saw Madanzo. He would go back sooner or later anyway. He wanted to see Madanzo for no other reason than that he didn't know anyone on the continent when he had just walked out of the mountains. So he decided to make Babylon city his first stop. At the same time, he wanted to see how Madanzo was doing with the power of two sides. Aman had received the message from Bear that there were many things that Madanzo had not taught him after he left. If Madanzo had reached a bottleneck and didn't know how to continue, then Aman's trip would be a good guide for him. There was another reason why Aman wanted to see Madanzo. After all, Madanzo was an advanced warrior who grew up in the capital. He had learned many fighting techniques that Aman was not familiar with. These were things that Aman needed to learn. The closer he got to Babylon city, Aman couldn't help but think of Yun Numna. Would he meet her again in the capital? She must be with her fiancé, Gilgamesh. It was said that Gilgamesh would go to the capital soon. Would Princess Sisala go with him? If she came to see Aman again as Yun Numna, how would he meet her? But the possibility was very small. How would Yun Numna know where to find him? Better not to think about it. When he arrived at the outskirts of Babylon city, Aman encountered his first obstacle since he traveled the continent. After all, Babylon city was the capital of the kingdom. Although it was peaceful, it was still heavily guarded. The guards at the gate were all warriors. Even the captains of the squads were at least advanced warriors. Each gate was guarded by 3 mages, one of whom was at least an advanced mage. They didn't show their faces in the watchtowers, but they could detect any suspicious people with magic at any time. Aman had thought of sneaking over the city wall at night, but he discovered a faint fluctuation of magic power on the wall. It turned out that a magic formation had been laid around the entire city. Only the capital could have such a grand formation. Goliath had also temporarily laid such a formation in Saya. Among the known cities on the heavens pivot, there were only 5 that had permanent magic formations: Thebes, the capital of Igut; Montefiore, the capital of Hittite; Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, and the capital of Babylon city. The magic formation here was much more complete than the one Goliath had temporarily laid. When fully activated, it could be used for both offense and defense. It could protect the city like an impregnable fortress. However, it was usually not fully activated. It only had the function of detection. If one wanted to detect any abnormalities in and out of the entire city, it would cost several parangons every day and a supreme mage would be in charge of it. Only the capital had the power to send enough supreme mages to take turns to carry out this task. It was impossible for Aman to sneak past the detection of the magic formation without alerting anyone. He could only enter the city during the day. He had a document issued by the Cape States of the Empire of Igut. As long as he filled in his name, he could prove that he was a citizen of the Empire of Igut. However, this was the Kingdom of Babylon. Aman didn't have any immigration documents. Carrying such a document would only cause him more trouble. Citizens of the kingdom didn't have to show their documents, but they had to be interrogated by the guards at the gate. Aman didn't want to have anything wrong with the things he was carrying with him. At least, the bone couldn't be picked up by ordinary people. If it was found, it would definitely attract special attention. Aman didn't expect that he would have to rely on Gilgamesh's help to enter the city. He heard that Gilgamesh would arrive in 3 days with gifts for Marduk and Princess Sisera, and there would be a grand celebration. The king ordered the people to go out of the city to welcome Gilgamesh and hold a grand parade in the city. Aman could blend in with the parade and enter the city without being questioned by the guards. Would he see Numna sitting in Gilgamesh's luxurious carriage and entering the palace with the hero amidst the cheers of the people? Aman thought to himself. However, 3 days later, Aman didn't see Numna. Gilgamesh's carriage was still the same, without a shed and a large umbrella. Gilgamesh himself had changed into a dignified and luxurious robe, with an exquisite warrior's long sword. He stood under the umbrella, accepting the cheers of the people, smiling, nodding, and waving from time to time. Gilgamesh's carriage was the second to enter the city. The first carriage did not have a shed either. There were 2 altar-like decorations placed on top of the carriage, on which were Enkidu's spoils of war, the snake tendons and fangs extracted from Humbaba's body. These were the bones of the legendary gods, so Gilgamesh exposed them to the sun, so that the people in the city could see them clearly. Aman also saw that the snake tendons were much bigger than the one he got from the river. Each tendon was as thick as a thumb and more than a foot wide when coiled together. They were golden in color and shone with an orchid luster under the sun, like ripples flowing under the golden light of the setting sun. On the altars on the left and right sides of the carriage were 3 coiled snake tendons, and on each tendon were 4 snake fangs, 2 long and 2 short. The long ones were more than 3 feet long, and the short ones were more than 2 feet long. One could imagine how terrifying the snake's mouth was. The snake tendons and the bones of the gods were in Aman's bag, so he was particularly interested in them. At first, he was careful not to use detection magic to investigate, lest he expose himself in the crowd. But when the carriages passed through the city gate, Aman sensed countless magical fluctuations coming from all directions. Some came from the royal guards who welcomed Gilgamesh, some from the city walls, and some from the people who lined the streets to welcome him. Aman didn't see anyone with a staff in the crowd. It seemed that many mages had come out of the city in disguise today. Who wouldn't be curious about the bones of the legendary gods? Even the magic formation guarding the city walls had been deliberately activated. The supreme mage who was presiding over the magic formation must have used the formation's powerful detection ability to carefully study and analyze the snake teeth and tendons that passed through the city gate. Since Gilgamesh had put them on the first carriage and entered the capital without concealment, he wanted everyone to see them, to prove that he was not lying, and to increase the prestige of himself and Enkidu. He looked arrogant to the extreme, and frank to the extreme. There were also many women in the crowd, but they were not interested in the snake tendons and fangs. They just waved their headscarves and screamed at Gilgamesh, "Dear Gil, the great hero, I worship you. Look, he's smiling at me, nodding and waving at me, it's the great Gil waving at me." The girls who were shouting looked so happy that they were about to faint, but Gil still had a humble and noble smile on his face, waving at everyone. Unlike those infatuated girls, Aman took advantage of the opportunity to carefully sense Humbaba's tendons and fangs while he was not discovered. The fangs were different from the bones in his bag, and could be clearly sensed by the detection magic. They had a terrible aura. Just as Aman was concentrating on sensing them, a roar that sounded like thousands of bison roaring at the same time sounded in the depths of his mind, with a huge impact and shock. Aman had heard this sound the night Enkidu killed Humbaba. If it weren't for his strong and profound mind, his state of meditation would have been interrupted. He had already determined that these fangs could be used as materials to make the best staffs and rare magic artifacts. But they were not the same as Osiris's ribs. The bone in his bag was either a real god's bone or had been magically processed. Chapter 61. Surprisingly, Aman sensed that the tendon had properties similar to the aquaticore. Of course, it couldn't be used as a parangan, but if it was made into a long whip or a bowstring, it could greatly enhance the power of water element magic. If it was used on a warship, its power could be maximized. Aman planned to study the tendon carefully when he got back. Perhaps he could use it to make his first magic artifact. He remembered the day when he killed the serpent in the Euphrates River. There must have been 4 fangs frozen in the ice and exploded into the water. It was a pity that he didn't find them at that time. Although the tendon and fangs of the serpent couldn't be compared with Enkidu's trophies, they were still very precious materials for magic artifacts. Gilgamesh's gift to show off to the whole kingdom was really precious. While Aman was thinking about it, the caravan had already passed through the city gate. He hurried into the capital of Babylon among the cheering crowd. The parade passed through the city and came to the square in the center of the city, which could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. It was right in front of the main shrine of Marduk, facing the royal palace. On the left side of the square was the Academy of Magic of Babylon, and on the right was the Hall of Glory of Heroes. The memorial hall was dedicated to the famous heroes in the history of the kingdom. If there were no accidents, the names of Gilgamesh and Enkidu would also be engraved and enshrined there after their deaths. The people gathered on one side of the square. Under the long steps of the shrine, there was a semicircle cordoned off. The king of Babylon, Hammurabi II, and his ministers were there to welcome Gilgamesh in person. A governor was not qualified to be welcomed by the king in person, but Gilgamesh's achievement of killing Humbaba had attracted the attention of the whole kingdom. This was the glory he deserved. After all, Humbaba's fangs and tendon were at the front of the caravan. Hammurabi too took the opportunity to show his favor. The news had already spread far and wide. The city lords of the nearby cities had also rushed to the capital city to watch the show. They stood behind the king and looked at Gilgamesh with complicated expressions. A group of nobles had the same complicated look on their faces. They all knew that Gilgamesh was Princess Sisela's fiancé and knew that the kingdom of Babylon would face a struggle for the throne in the future. Some of them were wondering what Gilgamesh's intentions were, while others were considering which side they should take. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, smiled brightly and calmly. He knew that there were rumors in the kingdom that he might usurp the throne after marrying Sisera. The purpose of Gilgamesh's action was to express his loyalty to the kingdom and the gods. After killing Humbaba, he offered the snake's tendon and fangs to the shrine of Marduk, which was a clear declaration to the gods that Humbaba had violated the agreement between Marduk and Enlil, and that if Enlil had anything to say, he should go to Marduk. On the other hand, it was also a warning. He wasn't even afraid of the guardian of the Euphrates River, let alone any slander or threat. He swaggered into the capital city and received the cheers of the people and the welcome of the king. He didn't care about the rumors in the kingdom at all. The hero of the city was extremely arrogant. Enkidu, the greatest warrior in the continent, didn't accompany him to the city. He only brought a simple ceremonial guard and didn't ask the army to escort him, which made many people feel relieved. Ammon was watching the show in the crowd. He didn't care about Enkidu. He thought that Numna would enter the city with Gilgamesh, but he didn't see Numna in the welcoming procession in front of the shrine. When Gilgamesh entered the shrine accompanied by the king and the high priest, and the atmosphere in the square reached its climax, Ammon quietly left to find Madanzo. Today, the streets of Babylon city were almost empty. Ammon walked through the streets and alleys, asking the listless shopkeepers for directions. Finally, he arrived at Madanzo's house. It was a century-old house, which had been renovated in recent years. It looked beautiful and spacious. A long time ago, this block should have been the residence of the nobles. But after the old King Hammurabi I expanded the city and built a more magnificent shrine. Most of the lords and dukes now lived in the south of the city. The east of the city was basically the new residence of the rich and common people. There were many shops and inns nearby. Usually, this area should be bustling and noisy, but today it was quiet. Although Madanzo's family had declined and he had lost his noble status, he still lived in his ancestral house. He hired gatekeepers, coachmen, servants, and maidservants. It must have cost a lot to maintain such an ostentatious lifestyle. No wonder he would privately sell precious fine iron and damask steel to make money. Ammon came at a bad time. The gatekeeper told him that Master Madanzo had left a few months ago and hadn't returned yet. The mistress was not at home either. She had gone to the square in front of the shrine to watch the show. This surprised and disappointed Ammon. He had come all the way here only to come empty-handed. But it was normal. It had been almost 2 years since Madanzo left the savage tribe. It was likely that he had gone to Link again. Since he was already here, he couldn't just turn around and leave. Since Madanzo wasn't here, it would be good to see his wife. If there was any trouble at home, he could help solve it. Ammon had money and time anyway. He waited in the hall until it was almost dark. Madanzo's wife, Miri, came home with her maidservant. Hearing that a friend had come to visit Madanzo, she came to the side hall to meet him. Ammon was a little surprised when he saw Miri. He remembered seeing her and her maidservant in the cheering crowd outside the city gate. At that time, she was waving her scarf and screaming at Gilgamesh. Ammon had thought that she was a young lady, but it turned out to be Madanzo's wife. Miri saw Ammon in his old linen clothes, muddy shoes, and a crudely made stick in the shape of a tree branch. She frowned and tried to be polite. She asked Ammon why he had come. Ammon took out a golden token and put it on the table. "I'm Ammon. I told Madanzo that I would come to visit. He must have mentioned me to you. This is my token. Do you recognize it?" Miri recognized the sign as soon as she saw it. Before he left, Metatro had told her that if anyone came here and showed this sign, she must give them the best reception. This token was not only left by their family's benefactor, but also Madanzo's most respected teacher. When she saw Ammon take out the token, she was puzzled and even a little angry. The visitor was obviously a lowly foreigner, and a very young one at that. How could she let such a strange man stay at home and give him the best reception? The benefactor of Madanzo's ancestors had died a long time ago. What did it have to do with her that a young man came with a token? Judging from Amon's appearance, he couldn't be Madanzo's teacher either. The last time Madanzo came home, he had stayed at home for more than a year. This time, he finally said that he was going to do some business, but there was no news from him for several months. Miri was left alone at home. She didn't have much money left. Now that Metatro himself hadn't returned home, how could he not be angry that such an inexplicable creditor had come to him? Thinking of this, Miri tried to be as polite as possible. "Sir, I'm really sorry. I don't know this token, and I don't know you either. Madanzo isn't home, and I don't dare to take in a strange man. The neighbors will gossip. He left 2.5 months ago and said that he would be back in 5 months at most. Looking at the days, it should be soon. Can you come back in a few days? When Madanzo comes home, he will give you the warmest reception." With these words, she asked the concierge to see her out. She didn't even ask Amon to stay for a meal. Amon would have been surprised if he had just come out of the mountains. But after such a long journey, he had seen the fickleness of human nature. Why should he care about a woman? No one would be happy if their husband was away for a long time, and a strange man in shabby clothes asked for hospitality. He said to Miri, "I'll stay in the inn nearby. I'll come back when Madanzo comes home." When he went out, he looked at the pair of worn-out cloth shoes on his feet and saw that they were stained with mud. Amon smiled bitterly. Miri refused to let Amon in. She didn't treat him with the best hospitality as her husband had told her to. She sent her maid, Fasa, to follow Amon and see where he would stay. She was also planning what to say to her husband. Amon, of course, knew that Miria's maid was following him. He couldn't help but find it funny. He went to the inn nearby and asked for the best room with the entrance hall. It cost 2 silver coins a day. Miri was surprised by the maid's reply. Amon didn't do this for pleasure or to show off. He had been to many cities, and he knew that the better the place he stayed, the less trouble he would have to face. If he stayed in the cheapest inn, where many people slept on straw mattresses, even if a neighbor lost something, the first place he would be interrogated would be in that kind of place. On the other hand, he needed to meditate and practice magic every night, so he needed a quiet and undisturbed environment. He couldn't find any secluded places in the capital of Babylon, so he had to find the most expensive room in the inn. Even the waiter wouldn't disturb him without notifying him, which saved him a lot of trouble. The next day, Amon walked out of the inn and went to a nearby clothing store to buy some clothes. After a long journey, his linen clothes were worn out, and the 2 new ones he bought in Som were also old. Moreover, the weather was getting colder. It was early winter, and it was not appropriate to walk on the street in thin clothes. Even if he wasn't afraid of the cold, he couldn't look too dazzling. He bought 2 pairs of comfortable leather boots, the kind that Madanzo had worn on his long mountaineering trips. They were sturdy, good-looking, and durable. He also bought 2 sets of light fur coats. According to the laws of the kingdom, commoners could not wear excessive embroidery, but the beautiful patterns on the fur of wild beasts were natural, so it was not against the law. Therefore, rich merchants who did not have a high status loved all kinds of fur coats, and the prices were also very high. Amon was used to wearing fur coats in the savage tribe. He looked like a young master of a wealthy family who was out for a trip to the capital to see the world. As soon as Amon put on the new clothes, Miria's maid, Fasa, came to pick up the winter clothes that Madame had ordered a month ago. The shopkeeper said unhappily, "These 2 sets of fur coats cost 30 silver coins, but you don't want to pay for them. My business needs capital, and I can't afford to owe you." Fasa hurried to explain, "My master will be back in a few days, and he will pay you back with interest. Please let me take the clothes first, or Madame will scold me." The shopkeeper's face darkened. "What does it have to do with me if your master scolds you? Since your master will be back in a few days, you can come back in a few days. How can I continue my business if everyone is like this?" Seeing this, Amon thought that it was not easy for Madanzo to earn money, and his wife was very generous. These 2 sets of clothes were even more expensive than the ones he had just bought. However, he couldn't let Madanzo's wife not get the new winter clothes. He took out 2 gold coins and handed them to Fasa. "Aren't you Madanzo's maid? I will pay for him, and when Madanzo comes back, he will come to visit me. He knows who I am, and you know where I live." As soon as Aman returned to the inn, someone came to visit him. It was Madanzo's wife. She was waiting outside with all the servants. Although it was a short distance, the carriage was ready. Miri bowed to Aman as soon as she saw him. "Dear guest, you are my master's teacher, and I have neglected you. Please forgive me. I can't read, so I didn't recognize the sign yesterday. After you left, I found the family map, and I realized that you are indeed the benefactor of the family." Aman smiled and waved his hand. "You don't need to apologize. My husband is not home, and it is not convenient to take in a strange man." "How can I blame you?" Miri said. "Please don't say that. Now that I know who you are, how can I let you stay in the inn? The best room in the house has been prepared, and the servants have prepared a sumptuous dinner. The carriage is waiting outside. Please come with me. If you refuse this hospitality, my husband will definitely blame me when he comes back. Before he left, he had already warned me. Yesterday, I turned you away at the door. I really regret it. Please give me a chance to make up for it." She begged for a long time, saying that it was Madanzo's order, and that she would not neglect Aman. Aman nodded. Staying in Madanzo's house was more convenient than staying in the inn. Besides, he just wanted to find a quiet place. So he left the inn and followed Miri home. Aman stayed in Madanzo's house. Miri treated him very well, and the servants were very respectful to him. They called him Master Aman when they met. However, Matatro's family still hadn't returned after the deadline he had set with them. Aman couldn't help but feel anxious. Did something happen to Madanzo on his way here? Although he was an advanced warrior, it might be dangerous for him to travel such a long distance to sell goods under the control of the government. Miri was very curious about Aman's identity. She often tried to find opportunities to pry into his identity. She even asked why Madanzo called him Master. Aman, of course, would not reveal his identity. He only said that he met Madanzo when he was traveling, and that he taught Madanzo some of his skills. That was why Madanzo called him Master. As for the token in his hand, it was a gift from an elder, and it was because of it that he met Madanzo. Miri had heard of the legend of Madanzo's family. Madanzo's great-grandfather was a 6th-level mage and a priest of Marduk's shrine. He was buried somewhere in the chaos of war. Later on, a hunter from afar obtained his belongings and sent them back to Babylon City, which saved his family from a difficult situation at that time. A few years ago, Madanzo vaguely mentioned that the hunter had obtained his great-grandfather's magic book and became a sorcerer. But that was more than 100 years ago. Matatro hadn't come back yet. Miri didn't know what had happened to him. One day, she said to Aman, "You've been in the capital for some time, but you've always been wandering around the house and the yard. There are many interesting places in the capital. You may not be familiar with the capital. I'll ask the coachman to take you around. Fasa will be your guide." Aman also wanted to explore the capital. It was good to have a familiar guide, so he nodded and agreed. One day, Aman went out in Madanzo's carriage, accompanied by Fasa. Before leaving, Miri told Fasa to take Aman to some interesting places and eat delicious food. She also told him not to return home until it was dark. After Aman left, Miri sent the servant to the front yard and quietly went upstairs to his room. She carefully rummaged through his bag. Aman was a cautious man. It was not convenient to take the heavy staff with him, so he left it beside his bed. But he took out the 4 special gems and put them in the bone. The bone was shaped like a rib. To avoid losing it, Aman hid it under his clothes. It was a safe and hidden place. It contained his most important things, including all the relics from the mysterious cave. He did not carry the big leather bag with him. His clothes were also in the room. There was also a small leather bag in the big leather bag. That was his money bag. Aman was rich enough. Any one of the relics from the mysterious cave was very precious, let alone the 4 special parangons. He could not afford to expose them. But he did not care much about money. He only knew that it was important to travel around the continent. In fact, he did not need to spend much money. Since he arrived in Babylon City, he needed to stay in a hotel and buy things. So he put all his money in the bag. There were gold, silver, copper, and even parangons, which was convenient for him to use. He had to use spatial magic to move things back and forth in the bone. The bone itself would not be detected by detection magic, but the energy fluctuations during the use of spatial magic could be detected by others. He had to be careful and use the bone as little as possible. After all, this was the capital city. He took 5 parangons with him when he left Duk and picked up another 9 in the cave. After crossing the Euphrates River, Gilgamesh compensated him with 10 parangons. He gave one to Madanzo, Cain, and Abel on the way, so he still had 21 parangons left. He put them together with the coins in the small leather bag. Of course, he could not bring so much money with him, so he only put some coins in his pocket. Miri was a little disappointed to find that Aman only had a few sets of clothes with him. But when she opened the bag and saw the dazzling parangons and coins, she gasped and froze for a long time. This was a huge sum of money, equivalent to what Madanzo could earn in decades. Although there was no one in the room, she felt very nervous. Her heart was pounding and she could not even breathe. She wanted to put the bag away, but she could not bring herself to put it down. When she put it down, she put her hand on her chest and took a few deep breaths. Then she began to search the other things in the room. Apart from the clothes and the bag, Aman had nothing else on him except the stick that looked like a tree branch leaning against the bed. Miri reached out to pick up the tree branch, but she almost sprained her waist. It was so heavy that she could not lift it with one hand. Miri reached out with both hands to lift the stick off the ground. Suddenly, she understood something. She knew what kind of business Madanzo was doing. It turned out that the stick was a whole piece of damask steel disguised as a tree branch. No wonder Aman insisted on not letting the maid tidy up his room. This young man was very wealthy, but he dressed so simply when he first came to Babylon City. There must be something shady about him. He must be Madanzo's business partner, who specialized in buying fine iron and damask steel. It was not a big deal to buy these things in small quantities, but it was a felony to buy and smuggle them in large quantities. He really made a lot of money. Miri sighed in her mind. At the same time, she reevaluated Aman's purpose. He came at the time Madanzo agreed to come home. He must be here to collect the goods. But Madanzo never came back. This man would not wait long. As for what Madanzo had said before he left, it must have been a cover-up. He did not want to expose Aman's identity as an illegal black market merchant. Miri hurriedly put everything back in the room and tiptoed back to her room. She was sweating and breathing hard. She asked Fasa to get her a glass of water, but no one answered. Then she remembered that the maid had gone out with Aman. Just then, someone came to visit. It was her brother, Enoch, the son of a merchant in Babylon City. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.